We are live to YouTube. We will be live on Shaw in about a minute and a half.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thirty seconds to Shaw. We are live on Shaw.
I want to welcome everybody to our meeting this evening. I want to thank our broadcasting partners and our media partners for broadcasting our meeting and reporting on it. Madam Clerk, you can start the meeting. Thank you.
I have a motion by Councillors Gardy and Bezo-Allen, resolved that the minutes of regular council meeting of September 13, 2021 be approved.
All in favor? Carried.
And under agenda item 3, declaration of pecuniary interest, Councillor Shoemaker has declared a conflict with respect to the report concerning the sale of 69 Old Garden River Road, as well as the associated bylaw, as the proposed purchaser is a client of the law firm, as well as with respect to bylaw 2021-191, which is a zoning bylaw with respect to 1525 Trunk Road and 834 River Road. That property owner is also a client of his law firm. Councillor Hollingsworth has declared with respect to application A1921Z 306 River Road and A2021Z 255 East Balfour Street as the applicant is a relative.
Council, any other conflicts to declare? Seeing none.
I have a motion by Councillor Scott and Dufour, resolved that the agenda for September 27, 2021 City Council meeting as presented be approved.
All in favor? Carried.
And under agenda item 5, proclamations and delegations, agenda item 5.1 is National Truth and Reconciliation Day.
So Council, I want to start by thanking all of you for making an effort to wear orange or, mark some part of the day with orange. And I want to just tell the community that on Thursday, September 30th, we will be doing a flag raising at City Hall at 12:30. We will be raising an Every Child Matters flag, and I welcome anybody from the community that wants to attend that flag raising and show support to do so. It will be outside. I just ask everybody who does attend to be mindful of and respect the public health advice that we have received. So I have a proclamation to recognize National Truth and Reconciliation Day. Whereas in 2020, the Government of Canada introduced Bill C5 to make September 30th a federal statutory holiday called the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in response to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. Call to action number 80 and it received royal assent in 2021. Whereas the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, which is also known as National Orange Shirt Day, is a day to honor survivors, their families, and communities, and commemorates the history and legacy of residential schools. It also demonstrates the commitment to reconciliation and affirms that every child matters. Whereas the City of Sault Ste. Marie is committed to the truth and reconciliation journey and recognizes the importance of being honest and truthful about the times in our national and local history when, out of ignorance and intolerance, we did not. Whereas the city values its relationship with Batchewana First Nation, Garden River First Nation, the Indigenous Friendship Center, the Métis Nation of Ontario, and the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council, the Missinabbi Cree First Nation, the tremendous work of these communities, dedicated local organizations and advocates that are committed to furthering understanding the difficult truths of our past in an effort to help us build a better future together. Now, therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim September 30th, 2021 as National Day for Truth and Reconciliation here in the City of Sault Ste. Marie, and encourage residents to honor residential school survivors, their families, and communities in an effort to ensure the public commemoration of the history and legacy of residential schools remains a vital component of the reconciliation process. Thank you.
Agenda item 5.2, Fire Prevention Week.
I have a proclamation for Fire Prevention Week. Whereas Sault Ste. Marie Fire Services is committing to ensure that safety and security of all those living in our city and visiting our city. Whereas fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and provincially, and homes are the locations where people are at greatest risk from fire. Whereas Sault Ste. Marie Fire Services believes that all residential fires are predictable and preventable. Our fire service personnel are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and education. Whereas working smoke alarms save lives by providing early warning of fires so you and your families can safely escape. Whereas Sault Ste. Marie residents should be sure everyone in the home understands the sound of the alarms and how to respond to them. Whereas Sault Ste. Marie residents should be sure that their smoke and carbon monoxide alarms meet the needs of their family members, including those with sensory or physical disabilities. And whereas the 2021 Fire Prevention Week theme, Learn the Sights and Sounds of Fire Safety, effectively serves to remind us it's important to learn the different sounds of smoke and carbon monoxide alarms and how to respond appropriately. Therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim, pronounce the week of October 3rd to October 9th, 2021 as Fire Prevention Week. And I urge all residents to learn the sights and sound of fire safety to support the many public safety activities and efforts of Sault Ste. Marie Fire Services. I'm moving on to World Habitat Day, Madam Clerk. I don't think your sound is on, or at least I can't hear you, Rachel. Okay, so Rachel, while Rachel figures out what's going on with her sound, I will move on to World Habitat Day. Whereas in 1986, United Nations designated the first Monday of every October as World Habitat Day to encourage the reflection on the state of our towns and cities and the basic need for adequate shelter, and to remind the world of its collective responsibility for the future of human habitat. There's Habitat for Humanity Canada, founded in 1985, has grown to 50 affiliates in 10 provinces and 3 territories. And over the years, Habitat for Humanity Canada volunteers have logged more than 10 million hours, contributing to the completion of over 3,800 homes for low-income Canadian families. And here in Sault Ste. Marie, contributed to the completion of 14 homes for our own families. Whereas Habitat for Humanity believes in a world where everyone has a safe and decent place to live, and with the help of volunteers, donors, and habitat homeowners like local habitats like ours here in Sault Ste. Marie, and in every province and territory across Canada, help build and rehabilitate decent and affordable homes, from single-family houses to multi-unit developments. Habitat does not give away free homes. The people who partner with Habitat pay an affordable mortgage geared to their income and volunteer 500 hours with Habitat. This model of affordable homeownership bridges a gap for low-income working families, providing them with the opportunity to purchase their own home. And therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim October 4th, 2021 as World Habitat Day in the City of Sault Ste. Marie, and encourage residents support Habitat for Humanity and learn more about the importance of affordable housing. So we have one last proclamation, which is the Latin Hispanic Heritage Month proclamation. Do you have your sound back, Rachel?
I believe I do.
Oh, you do, yeah.
Can you hear me? Good, thank you.
No problem. So whereas in October 26, 2016, the House of Commons officially recognized October as Hispanic Heritage Month. Whereas in June 20th, 2018, the House of Commons officially recognized Latin American Heritage Month under Bill S-218. Hispanic Canadian Heritage Month provides 23 Latin Hispanic countries with the opportunity to share information with other cultural communities within the context of the Canadian values while preserving their language, diverse cultures, and traditions. Whereas Hispanic and Latin American Month is an opportunity to celebrate the achievements and contributions of Hispanic Canadians as well as their history, contributions, and culture. Whereas Hispanic Canadians are committed to preserving their rich heritage and language while contributing to the growth and development of the city of Sault Ste. Marie and our Canadian mosaic in the fields of art, music, literature, film, economics, science, sports, medicine, education, and public life. Whereas Hispanic Canadian Heritage Month demonstrates the city of Sault Ste. Marie's commitment to equity and inclusion through community initiatives, participation, education, and activities. Now, therefore, I, Christian Provenzanos, Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2021 as Latin Hispanic Heritage Month in the city of Sault Ste. Marie.
And under agenda item 5.5, it's an item that was added to addendum as a slide with respect to budget 2022.
Yeah, I understand Councillor Bezo-Allen wanted to make a few comments about budget 2022 and the consultative process. So Councillor Bezo-Allen, go ahead. I think if the deputy clerk has your slide, maybe if that could be shared on the screen.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I just want to thank our CFO and our manager, Shelley and Jacob, for all the work they do with budget, and Francine in the office and everyone in our financial department. It's a lot of work, and I want to take the moment to thank everyone in marketing with Tessa and Jordan. We had hoped that we could do something in person like we did at the Bush Plane a few years ago, but unfortunately that's not possible. So budget consultation is going to be virtual, but we will have paper copies available at the public library locations and the senior drop-in center. Are you able to share the screen, Rachel?
We're trying.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. So the budget process, input process will be October 1st to the 15th. We will announce 2 online town halls with our media partners. The mayor has graciously offered to participate in those, so thank you so much. And I believe our CAO, Malcolm White, will be participating in that as well. So please stay tuned for those dates and times so that you can participate. But if you just go to saultestemarie.ca/budget 2022, that will take you to the spot where you can enter in with the input tools and the survey. So it is up on the website. You can do a search because I think we're having some technical issues with the slide. But the slide, I believe, is up on the council agenda that you can find online as well.
And we'll make sure Councillor Bezo-Allen, that city staff posts that information prominently on the website. So if you go to the city website, you could see the information that Councillor Bezo-Allen is attempting to direct you to so that you could participate in our budget process.
Thank you. And I'm sure we will all share it on our social media platforms as well. So thank you very much. And again, thank you to our marketing department for being very flexible and innovative in these times.
So council, we're not going to go to 5.6 right now. What we'll do is we'll deal with 5.6 when we deal with 7.3.1, and we'll just receive the presentations and have questions all at the same time on those instead of splitting them into 2 different sessions. So we can move to, unless the clerk has any objection, we can move to the consent agenda.
Sure, I'll read the consent motion just because Councillor Hollingsworth did ask for an item to be accepted. So the motion is by Councillor Scott and Dufour. Resolved that all the items listed under date September 27, 2021, agenda item 6, save and accept agenda item 6.3, be approved as recommended.
Oh, well, yeah, so we'll go through consent before we vote on that, obviously. So we're on the consent agenda, council. Do we have matters for consent? Councillor Christian, you had sent me a message, so we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll start off with 6.1, our financial rating, our every 2-year rating. Credit rating, thank you. Question through you to CFO Shell. Shelley, can you define for us operating revenue and operating expenses as outlined in the, or identified in the report?
Whereabouts are you referring to, Mr. Christian?
The actual report that came from the rating agency. I'm just trying to, the screen is frozen. They listed the years, and then on one of the axes, it has operating revenue and operating expense. My screen is frozen. I can't seem to get to it.
I found it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, the operating revenue and expenses that they show tie into our FIR. So they wouldn't tie into our budget necessarily, as they are based on our audited financial statements, which feed into the FIR. So they will be slightly different, and they are our consolidated numbers, not just the city.
Okay. That sounds that's impressive. Not quite sure what you were telling me. And that's not your fault, that's mine. But I would like to make a suggestion if I could. I've gone through these a few times, and I always get stuck on some of these terms because in different environments they mean different things to different organizations. And it's just a thought that in the future, if we could get some kind of small definition to accompany these reports, I think these types of the terms and the actual numbers would mean more to everybody. I think if we had a more defined, if we had a better idea of exactly what those mean in the context of the city. So that's just a suggestion going forward. One other question, under the rating score snapshot, by the way, another great credit rating for the city. So my compliments to everybody involved, staff, city council. These are really good numbers again. Budgetary performance, we're rated as 1, but I was kind of confused by the mediocre number 3 for financial management. Do they give any explanation as to why, or do you have any idea why that's rated as average and not good like our liquidity and our budgetary performance? I would think that number would kind of go hand in hand, would it not?
I would have hoped so myself, and I did look at some of our northern comparators that Standard & Poor's also evaluates, because I was curious about that number myself.
Yeah.
It appears that the ones that are ranked at a 2 are ones that have multi-year budgets. So that, and they ask us every year where we're at with it. And I'm pleased to report that we are starting to implement our Questica budget system. Once we get that up and running, it's going to make it much easier for us to start presenting council with multi-year budgets. The plan is also to provide council with more than just a 4-year forecast for capital, as we have been. One of the items that they are quite happy with our financial management are the various policies that they note in there that we have implemented over the last several years as well.
Thank you. Good. That's very, very helpful and makes perfect sense. And again, my compliments to you and your staff and to Mr. White and the entire city staff for putting together responsible budgets. I know a lot of people find things to complain about, but really in terms of our liquidity position, our debt burden, et cetera, we're second to none, and we should all be proud of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else in 6.1? before we move on from that, I just want to recognize the good work of staff right across the corporation to make sure that we are a responsible financial institution. And I want to recognize council and its prudence in the decisions it makes. It's, rewarding to get these independent third-party assessments that, confirm that you are managing your finances properly. So that comes with a lot of work. Thank you to Shelley and the team in finance, Malcolm and the senior management team, because everybody's obviously concerned about and responsible for their own budgets. And to you, council, for being judicious and making good decisions at budget time. So it's good to get these reports, and hopefully we'll keep on seeing this kind of solid report from our credit raters. Okay, so Councillor Christian, do you have anything else that you want to talk about on consent?
Yes, two more. 6.5, the proposed meeting schedule, and I apologize, my screens are frozen here. I believe this would go to the city clerk, Mr. Zinski. I saw the report, and it sounds like staff are in favor of the modified schedule of every 3 weeks, which I'm fully supportive of. My only question would be, do you foresee any issues as far as budget planning? I know that, this our budget is predicated on our meeting schedule, et cetera. Do you foresee that the budget planning will be adversely affected in any way if we go to this 3-week schedule?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian. No, we would schedule budget meetings separately from regular council meetings, sort of in the same manner that we do now, where we'll have a preliminary at a regular council meeting, but our budget sessions are scheduled independently of the regular meeting schedule.
Okay, thank you.
Similarly
And
for special
clarity,
meetings.
those would be additional meetings, Councillor Christian.
Right. Just to be clear that's considered. Otherwise, for all the reasons listed in the report, I'm in favor of that. So I appreciate that. That's it on that issue.
Anybody else on 6.5? Councillor Bruni.
Mr. Mayor, to Rachel regarding the every 3-week meeting. So we're going from 19 meetings down to 14 meetings?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni. I can't say I counted them.
Oh, okay. So the reduction of the 5 meetings, do you see in the future there will be meetings added on because of the 3-week space time?
I think the CAO wants to speak to that.
Yeah, sure.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, just one note. Of course, next year's schedule will have less meetings because it's an election year. And we do drop the normal council meetings that you would find in the month of October. So that's one reason that you see the amount of less meetings that you do. The other point we would make is this schedule does not preclude council from having special meetings, either for a topic such as budget or strategic planning, or for matters that have arisen that are urgent and need to be dealt with.
Okay, thank you very much.
So just for my own clarity, Mr. CEO, because I didn't anticipate or believe the number was going to be that significantly different as the one Councillor Bruni just identified. But I think if Councillor Bruni was counting the meetings in 2022, which is an election year, it is why it would be less than a normal year. Is that correct?
That's correct, because of the fact you are having an election and because of the fact that the clerk's department is running the election, and therefore, once you get to a certain point, is unable to administrate council meetings, and we simply get too close to voting day. There are no meetings in October, as there usually would be, and a less amount in November.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else on 6.5? Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just kind of for public perception, would we
Yeah,
ever
Mr.
entertain
Scott,
that?
you're very low. You're almost inaudible.
What if I try now? Is that better?
That's better. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Just for like public perception point of view, would we consider potentially reducing compensation for counselors if we're reducing the amount of meetings? I know that we do work outside, but I've had people reach out to me about this exact thing, asking me if we were going to reduce our compensation if we're going to reduce our amount of meetings. So I didn't know if we took that into consideration at all, or if we would even entertain that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
But I'm going to speak to that, and then you could add whatever you like, Mr. Seo. Staff would not recommend to us to reduce our own compensation like that. Staff was asked to report back on something specific, which was the meeting schedule. If you wanted to have a consideration, Councillor Scott, about reducing the remuneration for city councillors, you could certainly start that conversation. You can bring a motion, but it's not something that staff is going to recommend to city council in response to the motion on how many times we should.
Okay.
CEO.
You captured it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, that's good information.
Through you, Mr. to Councillor Scott, if I might, I would just point out that it's not lessening the workload, it's spreading the workload more evenly throughout the.
Yeah, and I suspected as much as well. I assume if we went to this schedule, the meetings would probably be a bit longer than our standard 2-week meeting. Reason I just wanted to bring it up was because I did have people reach out to me about that, and I just didn't know if that was a consideration. But the answer that the mayor and CEO White gave was good for what I was looking for. So thank you.
I guess just for the interest of the general public, I would point out two things. One is that there was a change a few years back where part of your remuneration was an honorarium that wasn't taxable. And that was changed, and that is now taxable. And we didn't increase the remuneration to accommodate for that. So in effect, I think everybody on this council is making less than everybody on the previous council would have made. The second thing I should note is we did not increase the remuneration when we decreased the number of city councillors. So in more than one way, I think you're probably making less than councillors in the past, at least on a relative basis. Council, I have no issue with this proposal. It was something that city staff had looked at a few years back, but didn't bring to council because you hadn't asked for it, but you recently did. The only thing that I'd be mindful of is I'm in here every day, so I'm very connected to what's happening, and I'm very connected to the city staff. And you need to be mindful of whether or not this would affect your connection in any way. I don't think it should, because I think our meetings will probably be a little longer every few weeks, and a number of you that are very actively engaged in the files are frequently talking to city staff on the regular. Just that if we do meet every 3 weeks, we will be seeing each other a little less, and your connection to City Hall as city councilors might be a little less frequent. Otherwise, I think the upside is that it does give staff a little more time to put things together and put substantive reports together in between meetings. Right now, the timelines are very tight. So those are just my thoughts about it. I'm happy to stay with the status quo if that's what council wanted. Happy to transition to this schedule that's suggested by staff if that is also what council wants. Any other comments on this matter? 6.5, Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. You mentioned, Mr. Mayor, about with regards to the workload or number of items hypothetically that would be discussed at a council meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's a bylaw that states that if our meetings exceed 10 o'clock at night, we as council can agree or disagree to lengthen the meeting beyond 10 o'clock. And I believe that still hasn't changed and probably won't change, correct? So that gives us a chance to get through some more heavier items if the agenda seems to be longer for a particular meeting. Is that correct?
Well, the procedural bylaw has a 5-hour limit for our meetings. Council can move a motion to exceed that in any given meeting. It's not a specific time frame, doesn't say 10 o'clock, but I think my recollection of the procedure bylaws, there's a 5-hour limit to the meeting, subject to council overriding that part of the procedure bylaw. I believe that's correct, Mr. CEO.
Yes, it is, Mr. Mayor.
Does that answer your
Okay.
question, Councilor Hollingsworth?
It does. So it gives us some flexibility for those odd meetings that may be heavier with discussion. And so you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, you said that this has been looked at before in the past about changing our schedules?
Well, the staff had looked at different ways to optimize the council schedule or how you could actually do council meetings. And they determined previously there was really only 2 ways you could do it, the way we were doing it, the way we are doing it, or having it every 3 weeks consistently throughout the year. You're aware that right now the way it is we don't actually meet every 2 weeks. We meet every 2 weeks for most of the year, but then for July and August, we only meet once. This wouldn't be the case anymore. We would just consistently meet 3 weeks throughout the year, with budget meetings being in addition to that. But it wasn't something that council had sought out. So at the time, staff didn't bring it forward. And then you recently sought it out. So they had that work done and that analysis done, and they brought it forward to you. And if that's the way you want to go, then staff is obviously supportive of it, and we'll proceed as of 2022 in that way.
Okay, one last question on this subject. When they did their analysis, out of curiosity, did they look at, the mayor role part-time, full-time? Out of curiosity, did they do a whole analysis, or were they just looking at council meetings?
Well, I can let the CEO speak to that, but this is a great opportunity for to maybe clarify something that I think is widely misunderstood in the community. There's nothing here or anywhere that says the mayor's role is part-time, and it's not considered a part-time job. It's just the number of people who've held it have had other responsibilities. I can tell you, over my 7 years, I've certainly engaged the job as a full-time job, notwithstanding that I had other things in my life that I had to attend to. But there isn't anything anywhere that says the mayor is a part-time job. So like you hear that a lot, and you hear people say we need to change that, but there's really nothing to change, because it's actually not recorded anywhere that this is a part-time position. And I think the vast majority of people who would expect to do it or would do it would certainly expect to do it on a full-time basis. Certainly I think it's good for the community to recognize that it is a full-time position. Mr. White, did you want to add anything to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, as the mayor stated, there is no formal guidance or requirement in the Municipal Act as to whether the role is full-time or part-time.
Okay, great. And I wasn't trying to imply anything. It's just these are questions I've been receiving from constituents, so it's a good time to just clarify. So thank you to both of you. That's all.
Okay, so Councillor Gardy, I had you on 6-5, then Councillor Nero.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I was, there are a number of other communities across the province that kind of adhere to the schedule that staff is proposing. I did a quick look this weekend. Peterborough, St. Catharines, and Guelph seem to mirror this kind of idea. I agree that it wouldn't be less work, but kind of more balanced approach throughout the year. And I'd be in favor of this providing staff more time in between meetings to get stuff done for us. Thanks.
Councillor Nero. Thank you, Councillor Gardy. Councillor Nero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering, have we pulled this so we could, go either way on this, or are we?
Yep. It's not pulled. Would you like me to pull it and we can vote on it independently?
Yeah, could we please?
Yeah.
I'm not sure, I'm not sure that I understand why we want to go to, why staff is recommending 3 weeks. I'm not just sure personally that that's the best thing to do as far as councillors are concerned. I think the 2 weeks is working very well. I realize that staff is rushed in some cases when council asks for something to come back the next meeting. But I think in those cases, we ask staff their opinion if they can bring it back in 2 weeks. And most times they'll let us know if they can't. And if that's the case, then it comes back for the next meeting after that. I've seen.
If we're going to pull it, well, let's pull it, and when we'll deal with it independently. And I'll start with you at that time, Councillor Nero.
Yeah, I think that I'm last, I guess, to comment here. Discussion's probably done, but yes, I'd like to pull it.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Christian, you said you had two matters. We just dealt with one of them. What's your last one?
The last one is 6.7 Kiwanis Club Lakeshore donation. It's only a comment, and it's a thank you to that organization for their generous contribution to the Rosedale Park. I think this is a good example of an organization in Sault Ste. Marie doing good things. They clearly have done things like this in the past, and I know I can't speak for everybody, but I'm confident that we all agree that it's a generous donation and we appreciate it. It shows good fiscal management and helps us manage our expenses, and it also builds good relationships within the city. We need to do more of these partnerships. I think it's good for everybody. It's good for the community, and certainly the neighbors in that area will appreciate the donation going forward.
Thank you for recognizing that, Councillor Christian. Anybody else on 6.7? Okay, so who else has consent matters? Councillor Gardy, and then Councillor Nero.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to point out 6.6, the brewery block development, and Mr. Jomey's plans to develop potentially a 60-unit condo development in that area. I think it's more good news for downtown, more residents downtown in that specific portion of downtown, and hopefully that will be something that we'll be able to he'll be able to proceed with, and we'll get more people living and enjoying downtown on a full-time basis here in the Sioux.
Thank you, Councillor Gardy. I agree with you. It's a super exciting project, and certainly hopefully it'll move forward, and happy about it. I've got a list here. I've got Councillor Shoemaker, Councillor Scott, and Councillor Bezo-Allen. Councillor Shoemaker, we can't hear you. So Councillor Shoemaker, I still can't hear you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Councillor Bezo-Allen, and then I'll come back to you. Yeah, you're still not audible. Well, at least not to me anyway. Councillor Bezo-Allen, can we, while Councillor Shoemaker sorts out his audio, can we get to you?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to probably Mr. Vare. Mr. Vare as well. Ironically, the last couple of weeks, I've had a lot of constituents saying we need more people living downtown. And so this is really welcoming news. As far as you know, from the development proposal, so currently Mr. Giommi is looking at 60 units. They're all going to be condominiums, so for purchase?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bezo-Allen, yes, that's correct. They would all be, as far as we know at this time, condominium units for purchase.
Okay. And I know that he does own a mixed-use building currently that houses the midwives and Big Lake Cabin and a pharmacy in the old PUC building. Do you know if his plan is to do any other mixed use with this proposal at this point?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bezo-Allen, yes, Mr. Giommi has indicated that he is looking at doing some commercial development in this building, possibly a restaurant and potentially other things. It's at an early stage, but there may be a commercial element to this building as well.
Okay, well, thank you much, Mr. Vare and staff, for making this happen, because I know from what the conversations I've been having lately, this is very good news to a lot of people that really care and want to invest in our downtown. So thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Councillor Scott, and then we'll circle back to Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. The report doesn't mention anything about zoning. Is this, I know it was a parking lot for us, but is it going to have to come back to council for rezoning? I don't know if that would go to Mr. Vare.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Scott, I do believe there will be a rezoning process necessary with this property, yes.
Okay, so that makes sense. I don't suppose this will get started this year, given how late we are, but I look forward to seeing that come forward. I think this is a great project for downtown.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Shoemaker, let's give you another try, and then I'll go to Councillor Bruni. I think you're going to have to call in Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Bruni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Mr. Ver, and I believe Councillor Scott just briefly touched it. So once this is passed, Mr. Ver, do you know the approximate time that Mr. Giomi will start construction? Or is this going to be a 4, 5, 6 year delayed job?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, the indications I had from Mr. Giomi is he would like to start the project very soon. We hope to come back to council in the future with a final agreement for approval. And certainly he would like to get out to the public with the design concepts and open that up in the near future. So the hope and the goal is that this is going to happen in the near future.
Near future. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to offer my comments on what I think is really a tremendous development for our downtown. Later on in our meeting, we're going to be discussing, among other things, the background report from planning staff on the new official plan. That shows the data of how many new housing units we're going to be requiring over the next 10 years in Sault Ste. Marie, and it delineates some of the value in having those units occur in a densification way, especially in our downtown. And I think that this project is a tremendous example of that. The other item that we'll be discussing later on is, of course, the downtown plaza. And I think this is exactly the kind of development you want to see going forward at the same time as the city is showing their leadership in investing in our downtown. So those are my two thoughts on what I think is great news and a development that I hope to see go forward. Thanks a lot, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dufour. Councillor Shoemaker. There's some go. Maybe we have you now.
How about now?
Yeah, we got you now.
Okay, sorry about that. My question through you. Sorry?
No problem. Go ahead.
Through you to Mr. White, CAO White. First off, I think this is a great development, and I'm hopeful that it literally gets off the ground, because we know we've been hearing about development on that site for some time, but Mr. Giomi's got the track record to make it happen. My question's more with respect to the parking lot itself. In the past, I've brought forward proposals to charge city staff for parking, and one of the impediments that was raised at those times to that proposal was an agreement we have with Montana's to provide a certain number of parking spaces in the north lot there. So how are we accommodating those parking spaces if we sell this property?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker. If this does go through and we end up selling that strip of property, we will have to do a revised layout of the parking lot. At this time, we think we can accommodate the number of spaces we have there now, and as such, we wouldn't have to look to amend the agreement we have with Montana's for the spaces in the north lot.
Okay, so nothing insurmountable.
That's right.
Okay, that was my only question on that item. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, anybody else on 6.6?
I do.
Councillor Hollingsworth, go ahead.
Thank you. Again, this is tremendous for the downtown, as everyone has said. Just to talk about parking, to Mr. White, through you, Mayor. You mentioned about the parking. Do you know if he's going to be creating indoor parking for the potential residents? And if it's indoor parking, some of these condo complexes will have extra parking available for retail, extra parking available for events, which we could potentially benefit. Do you know if he's going to have indoor parking for his owners of his condos and potentially extra spots like you see in other communities?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, I'll refer this question to Mr. Ver, who's been dealing directly with Mr. Giomi. I don't know that all of that has been decided yet because it's still at the concept stage. Mr. Bear?
Thank you, Malcolm. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. I can say that Mr. Jomey has indicated he will have covered parking as part of this condo development. As indicated, we will come back in the future with the condo concept that will show the entire development, and it will have an indoor or a covered parking element to it. And just referring back, I know to Councillor Bruni's questions, part of the timeline will be dependent on sales for the units. So that's part of the equation in determining the, when the project will proceed.
Okay. That was going to be my second question, Mr. Ver, about what percentage of sales is he hoping to achieve before we know this is a go. But thank you for answering that. You're reading my mind. So basically with the parking, you never know, hypothetically, there could be extra spots for events. When we have Rotary Fest, it could be for events that are downtown that people can benefit from, hypothetically. So this is all positive, and he's local, and he's already has done a great job with the downtown. So thank you.
Okay, so I think that's everybody on 6.6. Councillor Gardy, do you have anything else on consent?
I don't think so, no. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. And anybody else have matters on consent? Councillor Nero, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My apologies if I missed this, but have we pulled 6.14?
We have not.
Sale of the old Garden River Road?
Yeah, so we'll pull 6.14, yep.
Please.
So we have 6.6. Just to be clear then, Madam Clerk, we have 6.5, 6.14, and what's the other matter that we have pulled?
6.3 at the request of Councillor Hollingsworth.
Okay, do you have anything else, Councillor Nero?
No, just when those come up, I have comments.
Okay. Do we have any other, Councillor Dufour?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. 6.12, part-time bylaw enforcement officer funding. I don't have any questions, more just comments for City Council, actually. As many of you know, this particular item was something that first came up as a recommendation of our own task force. It came to us last December at budget time, and at that time, it fell one vote short of being approved and added to the levy. I wanted to thank staff for their report. I do agree with their recommendation. The funding model for this officer should come from the levy, because it is probably the corest of core municipal functions, is the ability to enforce your own bylaws and to protect your own assessment base. So I do think it's something that belongs on the levy. And I'm glad to see that staff found a way to lessen the budget request to something that I believe is a very minuscule $37,000. I just wanted to take this opportunity to basically pre-plead my case to council before our budget meeting in December, to really impress upon you guys the number of calls and the volume of work that I see happening on this file, especially in Ward 2 in the downtown. I can't think of anything that I spend more time on than this issue, save perhaps social services. I've been watching the level of complaints that we've seen moving through our system. We're still constantly sitting between 800 and 900 open active complaints every single day. That number has, just barely decreased since my time on council, when it was usually around 1,100 active complaints. I've gone and gotten statistics from the legal department, and everywhere through the chain of enforcing our bylaws, we've seen a doubling or a tripling of the workload with no addition of resources. And this is an area that, quite frankly, we can't afford to stand pat on the status quo on. We have a lot of challenges in our community. One of them is the high cost of taxes. especially in the outer ring of our community where assessment values are the highest. And if we're going to do something about that, we need to make sure that we're protecting assessment values downtown and growing the assessment base in these areas too. And the most direct way that we have to do that is with our bylaw enforcement and our building division. So I just want to encourage all city councilors to please consider voting for this when it comes time for budget, the very important issue that our community is struggling with. So thanks for my time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Dufour. I agree with everything you said, so I won't repeat any of it. So on this same matter, I've got 3 individuals that want to speak to it, 6.12. So Councilor Bruni, Councilor Gardy, then Councilor Nero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do agree most of Councilor's comments, Councilor Dufour's comments, but I guess my question is to Mr. Elliott or Girardi or Mr. Pozzebon. Why are you only putting in for a part-time bylaw officer? As we all know, as councilors, when we send in the complaints regarding yards, etc., it does take the bylaw officer some time to go visit the site. And it depends on the time of season, the summer, vacation, etc. So personally, I would have liked to see a full-time bylaw officer. I've was a strong advocate last council members for a full-time, but I see it's back to a part-time bylaw officer. So maybe a comment from one of the 3 would be appreciative.
So the question is why part-time as opposed to a full-time? Are you going to take that, Freddie?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor Provenzano, to Councilor Bruni. That was a recommendation through our task force. And we had gone through a few meetings and discussed what was the best option for the current time. We haven't had a meeting in a couple of months. You know, if it's the wish of council for me to go back to the task force for a full-time bylaw enforcement officer, I'm happy to do that, because I totally agree with what the comments that the number of complaints that we're receiving are growing, and you can see by the statistics that we're doing a lot of enforcement out there.
Did that answer your question, Councilor Bruni?
Yes, thanks.
Hey, Councilor Gardy?
And I was just going to say Councilor Dufour is right. Now I'm going to say Councilor Bruni's right. And I'm going to say Mr. Pozzebon's right, in that I don't think there'd be a vote against a full-time bylaw officer from this council at this point, based upon the need. So I'm all in favor of a full-time bylaw enforcement officer at the very least. Thanks.
Okay, so we got Councilor Nero, then Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too agree with the comments made by Councilor Dufour. I did read the comments from residents in the official plan that we are going to be looking at later tonight. Those comments were to the effect of that we have to do more as far as property standards are concerned and other bylaw infractions. I also really need to bring out the fact that last budget, did we not only bring in a part-time or half-time bylaw enforcement officer, but we didn't increase our legal staff by the request that was made at the time. And I really believe that if we go either to a half-time bylaw enforcement officer or an additional full-time, we really need to consider the look at the legal aspect of it, because all we're doing is bringing more and more issues to the legal department to deal with, and they're just getting held up there because there's just too many to handle. So if we're going to do more on the bylaw enforcement part, we really need to look at the legal aspect of it as well. Thank you.
Okay, so Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to jump in with some comments because my question was definitely asked already in regards to the part-time, half-time, whatever we want to refer to it as. But I would 100% be in support of a full-time position. I know that Mr. Posbon has heard a lot from me recently, and I know that that department is working as hard as they can and impressively hard for as small as they are. It's one of my biggest things as a city council right now is people I don't want to say complaints, but constituents bringing up issues with property standards. And I think it's something that we can shore up. I totally agree with Councillor Dufour's comments, and Councillor Nero brings up a very good point that if we do this without the additional legal support, perhaps we're just moving the bottleneck from one department to another. So I can say with confidence, I would be in support of a full FTE, one full-time position.
I'm sure Councilor Dufour is keeping track, and we're going to all hear about this at budget time. Is that everybody recognizes the need for it, but if we don't approve the spending, it's not going to go anywhere. So we're going to have to be as forthright and confident and supportive of this in a couple months' time, because we all recognize how critical it is. Councillor Hollingsworth, you had your hands up.
I did, through you, Mayor, to Mr. Freddie Posbon. Just for clarification, I believe sometimes the surrounding communities use our bylaw officers once in a while. Is that correct? Because they don't have their own bylaw officers?
Through you, Mr. Mayor Provenzano, to Councillor Hollingsworth. Yes, both of them, bylaw enforcement officers are they're hired by outside municipalities or townships.
Okay, and do we charge these other communities for the use of our personnel?
No, Councillor Hollingsworth, they do that on their own spare time.
We're not contracting that service out, Councillor Hollingsworth.
No.
Okay. So I understand that on their own time, they help the other surrounding communities with enforcing their bylaws. Is that my understanding?
Yes, Councillor Hollingsworth. Yes.
Okay. Okay. And no, I agree with the use of our bylaw officers, and part-time or full-time. There is definitely a need. And last question to you, Mr. Posbon. Correct me if I'm wrong, I agree our legal department is overwhelmed, but for the last year to 2 years, I believe our court systems for small claims have been shut down because of COVID. So there is probably a backlog. Can you just comment on that, just to bring the public up to speed? Because a lot of constituents are calling me to say they're still waiting for outcomes, but the court system seems to be backlogged.
Through you, Mr. Mayor Provenzano, to Councillor Hollingsworth. I don't know really if I can speak to the backlog. I'm sure Karen can, but I can tell you the part that we participate is that we're sending so much more to the legal department in the last 2 years with the addition of that extra bylaw enforcement officer. So it's a kind of a twofold thing. We're sending them a lot more than we ever sent in the last 2 to 3 years. And they're dealing with a lot more a much more caseload than they ever had before. And I'll let Karen explain the court process.
Thanks, Freddie. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. We have the courts running now for part ones, although this area are all part threes. So part threes are not being heard in the courts right now. However, we're still processing them. So we still go through all the process of laying the charge, sometimes working out a resolution. There'll be appearances, but and trials are set, but no trials are being heard yet. We will probably go into trials at the start of 2022, we're told by the province.
Okay. This is nothing to this item. Maybe in the future, can you give us an idea of what the backlog is right now with our court system in the future? And that's all. Otherwise, I do support, having part-time, maybe full-time. It'll be a good discussion in November. Thank you.
I can give you those stats if you want those. So we currently have 170 cases that are before the court on building and property matters. We have 58 scheduled for trial. 9 are waiting for a first appearance, and we've got 103 that are being processed towards trial.
Thank you. That's good information to know. Thank you. That's all.
As to do for usually people quit while they're ahead, but if you have a strong desire to speak to this again, we'll let you
I have a
finish.
very
up.
quick question for our city solicitor. Ms. Fields, can you tell us, you just said we have approximately 178 cases before the courts for building a bylaw this year. How many cases did the city process in 2016 through the legal department?
In 2016, I did have that number. Let me just see. Give me 1 minute. You might have that statistic.
It's 30.
Do you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour, I think it was about 30. We back in
It's
2016, you know, we didn't have the volume we have now.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. That's all.
Thank you. So if you do want those numbers, 2016, we had 30 charges. 2017, we had 60. 2018, we completed 120. In 2019, we had issued 127 Part 3 charges. Some of those are not resolved yet. 2020, 212. And to date in 2021, we're at 116. So the numbers are growing.
Okay, thank you. So anybody else in 612? We are almost at the planning part of our agenda. Are there any other matters on consent that are brief that we can deal with before planning? Councillor Hollingsworth?
It probably won't be brief. It was just on 6.11, so
Yeah,
afterwards.
that's not going to be brief, so we'll get to that one after. Council, any of you have any other matters in the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the planning agenda. Madam Clerk.
Under agenda item 7.7.1, a 1921Z 306 River Road, I have a motion by Councillors Gardy and Vezo-Allen, resolved that the report of the planner dated September 27, 2021 concerning rezoning application A1921Z be received, and that Council rezoned 306 River Road from single detached residential zone R2 to single detached residential zone 2, in addition to the uses permitted in an R2 zone, permit a semi-detached building subject to the building and lot regulations of a low-density residential zone, and that the legal department be requested to prepare the necessary bylaws to effect the same. There was correspondence that came in that was on the addendum, also correspondence that came in late today that was circulated to council.
Okay, so for planning, do we have Mr. McConnell on the line? Yeah, we do. Mr. McConnell, are you speaking to the planning applications tonight?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I certainly will be. And thank you very much. We have two applications on council's agenda tonight that are very similar. The first one, as the city clerk mentioned, is for property on the north side of River Road, just east of Dacey Road. It's a very large piece of property, 65 feet of frontage. It has about 240 feet of depth. The applicant, Mr. Fremlin, is requesting that council approve a rezoning to permit a semi-detached building on the property, 2 units. As I said, the property is very large, suitable for the use. It is recommended by staff. And I see that Mr. Fremlin has joined council tonight. Either Mr. Fremlin or myself would be happy to answer any questions from council.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mr. McConnell. Mr. Fremlin, are you speaking to this matter tonight?
I can if need be.
Okay, so you're here to answer questions, but you have no representations you want to make at this point?
No, that's fine. I can answer.
Okay. Okay, Madam Clerk, is there anybody else that's registered to speak either in favor or in opposition to the application?
No, Mr. Mayor, we don't have anyone registered.
Okay. Council, do you have any questions of either our planning director or Mr. Fremlin himself?
No, I don't.
We'll start with, you don't, Councilor Christian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to refer to the correspondence that came in late today from one of our constituents. And I'll simply ask the questions as outlined in the letter sent to council. This can be directed to Mr. McConnell or to Mr. Fremlin. Simply, the questions are as follows. One of them is, are the garages rather front facing, and are they part of the structure that's being applied for here?
Yes, they are both front facing and they are attached to the structure.
Thank you very much. And my second question is, how far will the homes be from the road? It appears, I guess, in the drawings that they're 40 feet from the road.
Yeah, roughly. It'll be a minimum setback. It'll be right at the minimum setback requirement.
Okay, thank you very much. As I say, I'm asking those on behalf of the constituents, so thank you very much. That's
Yeah,
it for
no
me.
problem. No problem.
Any other questions or comments from City Council? Mr. McConnell, you wanted to say something?
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to clarify, the minimum setback for semis is exactly the same as it is for a single detached dwelling. Mr. Fremlin's drawing that he submitted with his application does indicate 40 feet, but he would be able to build only 25 feet back, which from the lot line, which would be more than 40 feet back from the road, and still be in compliance with the city's zoning bylaws.
Okay, so the takeaway is, you know, he will be in compliance with the city zoning bylaws. There's no request for an adjustment of those numbers.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Council, do we have any more questions or comments? Seeing none, I see the clerk has identified the vote on your screen. Madam Clerk, you have to read that resolution.
I did read it initially, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so all in favor? Application's approved. Thank you for your time on that one, Mr. Fremlin.
Thank you.
We will move to 7.7.2, which I believe is also you.
Yes.
I just need Councillor Bruni on 306. Oh, there he is. And 7.7.2, application A2021Z 255 East Balfour Street. It's a motion by Councillors Gardy and Dufour. Resolved that the report of the planner dated September 27, 2021 concerning rezoning application A2021Z be received, and that council rezone 255 East Balfour Street from single detached residential zone R2 to single detached residential zone 2, in addition to the uses permitted in an R2 zone, permit a semi-detached building subject to the building and lot regulations of a low density residential zone, and that the legal department be requested to prepare the necessary bylaw to effect the same.
Mr. McConnell, I'm coming to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This application is for property on the south side of East Balfour Street, just a little bit east of Gooley Avenue. Like the previous application, it's also for a very large piece of property. It's about 69 feet in width by about 167 feet deep. It is also to rezone to permit a semi-detached. Staff is recommending this application, and once again, Mr. Fremlin is the applicant.
Mr. Fremlin, I assume you're proceeding the same way. You're just here to answer questions. You're not going to make any.
Yeah.
Madam Clerk, just for the record, do I have anybody registered to speak either in favor of or in opposition to the application?
No, Mr. Mayor, I have no one registered.
Okay. Councilors, do you have any comments or questions about the application? I see none. The clerk has put the vote on your screen, and all in favor. That application is also approved. Mr. Fremlin, thank you for your time tonight. Good luck with your project.
Thank you. Guys, have a good night.
So, Mr. Mayor, I don't know whether you wanted to go to the official plan background report now that we're talking about planning, or if you wanted to go back to consent and subsequently do the official plan background report.
I'd like to clean up and finish off the consent agenda, and then we'll come to this. if we can do that. If we'll go back to consent, and I'll go back to Councillor Hollingsworth, and we'll go to 611 and deal with that. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Freddie Ponsabon. First of all, I do appreciate that the building department is basically busy, swamped, and I can't imagine even this past year to 2 years with the number of building permits applications. So the staff, the team, they do excellent work in trying to help the community with their building permits. I just have a few questions with regards to your report. The first question, if you can just reconfirm, if I read this correctly, total permit fees for 2020 was about just over $1 million. Is that correct? Is that my understanding? Did I read that about 1,086,000?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, yes, that's the correct number.
Okay. And if I read your report correctly, the direct costs do not include the bylaw enforcement officers. That's a separate subject. It's more to offset costs of building plans, conducting inspections, and so forth. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Bylaw is a separate budget.
Okay. That'd be curious to see how much money we get from them. The other question, did we not undergo, are we not undergoing a review of the building department to look at processes to make them more efficient, or has that been concluded?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, we're always trying to improve our efficiency. We just recently launched an online permit application process for our citizens to basically apply for permits for fencing and sewer lateral reinstallations and backfill installations. So we're always improving. We don't really have a process in place that we've gone through, except for KMPG did one through finance that looked at our permit fees and stuff like that.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. With regards to the permit fees, did they suggest that they should be higher? Did they think that they're appropriate? And when was the last time we've increased our building fees?
I believe in the report they were satisfied with the what we were charging for permit fees, and we've kind of kept the increase very minimal, the cost of living only on the last 2 years. So we haven't really raised them up considerably.
Okay. And I might be jumping the gun because budget's around the corner. Are you going to be proposing that we look at increasing the fees, the building permit fees?
Yes, we're always moving forward. We'll always increase it to the cost of living, whatever suggested through our finance.
Okay. And last question, if I read your report correctly, it looks like that you once again had to transfer some money from one of your areas to offset some of the costs. Is that correct?
Are you talking about the $8,000, $8,900? Yeah, that was surplus money that's going into our reserve.
Okay. And in the previous years, have we done that before?
Not really, except for 2019, where there was a surplus. I can't remember what the number was off the top of my head, but it was more than the normal.
Okay. Well, I guess the positive sign is it fair to say that 2021, with all the building, we suspect probably the trend will be trending up when you give us this report next year. Again, I'm sure you're still swamped with so many different permits. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes, it is. It looks like the trend is moving up. Residential housing has the number of houses have increased for single family, and like you heard even this evening, there's our developers are starting to what we call put some shovels in the ground as far as getting some of their projects started, like the one you heard here on Foster Drive and some of the other ones that will come to fruition, I hope.
Okay.
It looks like there's going to be a good outlook for the next few years.
Excellent. And I'm really glad you made a comment with regards to online permits. And I hope that you and your team will continue on relooking at increasing more type of online permits, especially when it comes to single dwelling houses, something that's not as complicated. The feedback we're receiving from the Builders Association, from individuals, is that more online, it just makes their time more efficient, that they don't have to come down to City Hall as much. So I hope that in your plans, in your budget, that you're budgeting more for online to be a little more efficient. Thank you. That's all.
You're welcome.
We're going to go to Councilor Shoemaker next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Posbon. And 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 6, there was a report that came to us on building permit fees that substantially increased the permit fees at that time. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think it was like 25% a year for 4 years or something like that. And that was to protect our reserve because we were depleting it too quickly. And correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. This is my general recollection of it. And now I hear in your response to Councillor Hollingsworth that we're only increasing it by the cost of living each year. So I just want to be sure: are we going to at some point in the future hit another period in time where there's going to be a sharp increase in building fees, or do you expect that it'll be gradual from here on out?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, that whole plan that, if you remember, we did a 5-year outlook on what was going to happen between 2015 and 2020. And the increases were basically to cover our expenses. And in the last 2 years, hopefully to actually start adding some funds into our reserve, because we didn't have a reserve at the beginning of 2015, 2016. So it's actually it's evolved, and now, as you can see, we have 265,000 in our reserve, which is close to 20% of our total expenditures, and we're hoping to bring that number up so that we can afford to do online permit applications for housing, and even the bigger commercial projects that require more infrastructure as far as IT and monitors and items such as that. So we're keeping an eye on our increases every year. And what we're trying to do is not to raise them substantially, and in the hopes that there is this increase in construction activities, as you're seeing, which will bring more permit fees into the billing division, so we can bring a better services and more efficient services to our permit fee users.
So, so is the kind of short answer that you have to look at it every year, but provided everything stays kind of stable in terms of construction, you don't anticipate any major increases?
Exactly. And with our open house that we speak to our stakeholders every year, they're on track with how we're doing our projections. So we're working together with them so that we don't have these increases, and we maintain a healthy reserve in case there is a little downturn in the economy sometime. I don't predict that to happen for a while, and it can we can still sustain ourselves during those low points with what's in our reserve.
Okay, and on a low end, I mean, I realize that as things grow year over year, the low end probably, the tail end or the lowest end of our building permit fees also probably moves up. But what kind of dip would you expect in permit fees, if we hit bad times? Right now, it's just, I think you said it's just over $1 million. What would a low year be?
A low year would probably be under $80,000. Under I shouldn't say I should probably 91, 92. Usually those years, if we need to get more than about $80,000 in permit fees. to run the building division.
80,000 or 800,000?
Oh, sorry. Yes. Sorry. Yeah. 800,000.
Okay.
My apologies.
Okay. So 20%, 20%.
20%, yeah, 20%, Joe. That's why the goal was to try to get at least a reserve that was 25% of your expenditures or more.
Right, right. So if we hit one bad year right now, we'd be okay, but a number of consecutive bad years, we'd struggle.
We'd struggle, definitely, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else on 611? Okay, seeing none, I think that's it on the consent agenda, except for the matters we accepted. And before we move to those matters, council, last chance, anything remaining in the consent agenda? Seeing none, let's move off that then to, we'll start with 6.3. We'll start at the top of it. So 6.3 strategic planning software solution. Councillor Hollingsworth, you asked this to be pulled. So I'll start with you. You're on mute.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you, Mayor, and through you, Mayor, to the author, which I believe, I'm just looking at my notes here. Is it Karen? Purchasing manager?
Shelley, I think. Shelley, are you taking these? Yeah, Shelley will take these questions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Shelley, Shell, first question, to your knowledge, and maybe city clerk might be able to answer this, but to your knowledge, I understand a committee was put together, a staff committee, IT department, and other areas to look at the needs for this software program. Is that right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. From the procurement side, purchasing department assists the departments in any of their purchasing needs. But if there's actual questions that relate to the specific projects, that would be best to be transferred to the individual department that's responsible. So in this case, I think it's Rachel Tazinski that may be best to answer your questions.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Clerk, do you understand the question?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. So the strategic plan solution is housed within clerks, but it becomes under the responsibility of the Chief Administrative Officer. The evaluation team was myself, the Deputy City Clerk, and IT with input from the CAO.
Okay, so during the evaluation, by chance, did you receive a demo of this proposed software? And did you by chance receive a trial period so that you and the others could have played with it for a bit to see if it would meet the needs of City Hall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, we did have 2 demonstrations from 2 individual vendors.
Okay. And did you by chance get a 3-month trial period to see if it does meet your needs?
Through you,
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, 3-month trial period was not offered by any proponent in the RFP process.
Okay, it was not offered. Was it asked?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, no, it wasn't, and I would question the practicality of that. These systems do require a certain amount of implementation and staff training to undertake. And it certainly was felt by the committee that the demonstrations provided by the shortlisted proponents were adequate to make a decision.
Okay. I just went onto the website and did some of my own homework, and there was a portion that you could have asked for a trial. I guess my question, the other question I'm getting at is, it sounds like this is going to be approximately $83,000 over a period of 3 years, and with the option of extending it if it suits our needs. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hollingsworth, that is correct.
Okay. And personally speaking, I understand strategy is important. We're trying to get towards that, but at this time, I think and believe that is quite costly. But I just had this pulled because I think it's a really good discussion to look at the process in the future. And so I was just concerned about the cost seems to be quite expensive for the outcome. That's all at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on 6.3? See nobody else on 6.3, Madam Clerk, you'd have to read the resolution for that.
I have a motion by Councillors Gardy and Vezo-Allen, resolved that the report of the manager of purchasing dated September 27, 2021 be received, and that acceptance of the proposal submitted by Invisio Solutions for the provision of a strategic planning software solution tool at a cost over 3 years of $82,500 plus HST, with the option for up to 2 additional years by mutual agreement as outlined in their proposal as submitted as required by City Clerk's Department, be approved. And I'm just
in favor? Opposed? Were you putting that vote up, or are we just doing it by hand, Councillor?
You could just put it up. I'm only missing a couple.
Yeah, who you tell us who you're missing?
I'm missing Councillor Christian and you.
I submitted yes.
There you go.
Okay. That brings us to 6.5.
That's correct. Council meeting schedule.
Okay, I'm going to pick up at you, Councillor Nero. So you were just speaking against this, and then I'll take any other comments that Councillor might have, and then we can vote on that.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I was saying, well, I didn't say it in my first comments, but I recall when I was first on council, we met every Monday. And we, as councilors, certainly felt engaged when you meet every Monday. And staff was getting reports for council then. Then we moved to every 2 weeks. And I believe that was the right move to do. I think it's a very comfortable position to be in, to meet every 2 weeks. And like I said earlier, I think the problem that staff could have with the time being at a premium when council asks for something that stems from a council agenda and wants it back at the next meeting. I certainly do. My recollection is that when those instances happen, that we usually ask staff if it's possible, and if it's not possible, usually the councilors involved will go to the meeting after that. I just believe every 3 weeks is a little bit too long for a municipality of our size. Those are my only comments on that.
Okay, Councillor Shoemaker, and then Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I authored the resolution requesting this information. I'm glad the report came back. I see it as a best practice, as Councillor Gardy did. I researched some municipalities that have a schedule similar to this. Many of them are bigger than us. And so I think that it's a best practice in terms of what other municipalities are doing. And nothing is, forever. If we decided next year that the 3-week schedule wasn't working, we could just as easily bring a motion to revert back to the old one. I certainly think it's worth exploring, and I support the motion that's before us. And I think that we will benefit from it because, as Councillor Nero noted, sometimes we ask staff for reports, and if staff don't think they can get it back by the next meeting, we often go to the following one, but that defers things a month at a time. Whereas if they could get it back for the next one in this proposed scenario, we'd have it back a week earlier than under the current situation. So for that reason, I support it, and I think it is worth exploring. At least let's call it a pilot project and do it for the next year.
Okay, Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Shoemaker just snuck it in at the very end, but maybe we can on the resolution, just put it down as a 1-year trial. And then we can bring it back to council in a year's time to
Well,
discuss it again.
Yeah, I think Councilor Bruni, you don't need to amend the resolution in that respect. Staff proposes the schedule or puts the schedule to council every year. So staff could just take that under advisement, and it'll be a new council for the following year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the CAO for some direction, what kind of direction he'd be looking for from us to make sure that they could do what you're asking for here. Mr. CAO?
Oh, okay. But if it's in the resolution, Mr. Mayor, it will come back to council. So just a few extra words added to the resolution will not hurt anything.
No, it comes to us every year, I guess was my point. Mr. White, how do you want to proceed to on this matter?
Through you, Mr. Mayor and members of council, certainly this would be a shift in our previous practice. And as the mayor's noted, we do come back to you each fall with a schedule for the following year. I think it'd certainly be recognized by staff that we would, when we bring back the schedules for a future year, we would have to have some commentary in the report as to how this schedule worked. So I think Councillor Bruni, well, I appreciate why you're asking that should be in. I think I can assure you that staff would treat the spirit of that amendment anyway with what we bring back. It would be incumbent on us to give more of an analysis as to how 2022 worked on a 3-week schedule.
Are you satisfied with that, Councilor Bruni?
Not really, but if that's what council wants, that's fine.
Councilor Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a quick question that I thought about actually in the time that we took to step aside to the zoning. Do we think this will negatively impact zoning? I kind of think that sometimes developers, as they are waiting to get items onto the agenda for zoning. And if we have a gap, I don't have the proposed calendar up, but if there's a gap of a certain amount of length, is that going to cause any issues with zoning, or do we foresee, I don't even know how the process is right now, like, if we have too many zoning items on an agenda, which I don't think is a bad problem to have, do we delay any? Like, would this cause delays in zoning? I saw CAO White had his hand up, so perhaps this has been considered and he has an answer for me.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, conversely, especially during summer when development is occurring at a fast pace, as we've all seen, this would actually help the process by having more meetings available for zoning applications. We do run into a problem sometimes in summer with getting things scheduled only on a once per month basis. I'll let Mr. McConnell add anything.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I think Malcolm, I think Mr. White has certainly summarized the situation fairly. We do have limitations as to how quickly we can bring things to council based on public notice requirements. And the only issues that I can recall in my time here have happened in the summer, where the developers are very tight on time and council is only meeting every 4 and in some cases 5 weeks. So I do see this as a benefit moving forward.
So then you're saying, Mr. McConnell, that you believe that this would be better for anyone trying to get rezoning done?
That's correct. That's correct. I don't see any downside in that. There is a benefit during the summer months.
Okay. Now, just during the summer months or throughout the year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Scott, throughout the year, there really isn't any difference. I mean, we work on a policy where we try to get people to council within 6 weeks or less, and this would not change that. I really don't see much of a difference there. The benefit would be during the summer months when people are very busy and they need answers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, council, anybody else on 6.5? Councilor Venezuelan.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. And I just wanted to point out that to confirm, we would have 2 meetings in August and 1 in July. So January, May, August, we would see 2 meetings, and it's only just because it's an election year that it's a little bit different. And I would say that perhaps having a longer period between at times, especially in terms of planning, because we have received feedback from constituents at times saying that they didn't know about the planning notice, and that might give planning a little more time to get notice out and to have feedback from constituents when there is rezoning. I also just want to point out that all of us do sit on multiple committees. So it's not just that we just see each other virtually here. You know, I see many of you in other meetings, whether it's accessibility committee or finance committee and all the other committees that we all collectively sit on. So I don't think that the engagement piece would be any less. And I think it's just all up to us to be engaged with staff, as we need to be in with each other through other ways, especially with other committee work. So I do support this moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, any other councillors on this?
Mr. Mayor, procedural matter. I think if it's going to satisfy some concern, I would move to amend the motion just to make it explicit that the 2022 report bring back 2 options for the council for the 2023 schedule. I think that it may not need to be said, but if we say it and it satisfies the concerns of some of our colleagues, I don't see any downside to it.
Okay, can I have a seconder for that amendment, Councillor Bruni? Okay, so the main motion that will be read by the clerk will be amended just to direct staff to bring back 2 proposals to council for the 2023 council year. And that should address your concerns, Councillor Bruni, Councillor Shoemaker. Madam Clerk, do you want to read the resolution?
I'll read the resolution as amended. Resolved that the report of the city clerk dated September 27, 2021 concerning council meeting schedule be received, and that a 3-week meeting schedule be adopted for 2022 with 2 options returning to council in 2023.
That does the trick, I think, Councillor Shoemaker, Councillor Bruni. Okay, all in favor of the resolution? Opposed to the resolution? Councillor Nero, are you opposed or are you in favor?
I voted in favor.
Okay, so just, I've got everybody recorded then. Madam Clerk, do you have everybody?
I'm waiting for Councillor Gardy and Councillor Venezuela.
They were both in favor.
Here we go. That'll bring us to agenda item 6.14, which is the sale of Old Garden River Road. I would just point out that because there's a bylaw related to that, there isn't a motion specific to the council report. However, there is a bylaw which has been separated from consent.
I just, before we move on, I hear a dinging and it isn't my phone. It might be the deputy clerk because she's not on mute. So if that is you, Madison, maybe if you could mute.
Mr. Mayor, I'm afraid that is probably because we had to go to an alternate solution for audio.
Gotcha. Understood. Okay, no problem. So we are on 6.14. That was pulled from consent. And Councilor Nero, you pulled that, so I'll start with you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just some comments. I have no questions.
Go ahead.
The report from staff was very comprehensive, and I just don't have any questions on it. You know, I realize that council directed staff to bring this forward as we were looking at all surplus properties in the municipality, and I was one that supported the direction that this particular piece of property come back to council as a surplus property and that we dispose of it as we saw fit. But in the interim, I mean, we rezoned 145 Old Garden River Road for the new withdrawal management center, and which is not what we all thought was going to be, but it's a start. It's a good start for this municipality. But we hope that it is able to expand. I hope the province looks at the request and gives us that option to expand that facility. For me in particular, when that particular rezoning came into play, it kind of changed my position on the surplus land that we looked at, 69 Old Garden River Road, which abuts, both North Shore Sports, who is one of the proponents that is looking to purchase, and it also abuts, I believe it's 145 Old Garden River Road, which is a Di Tommaso property, and which is leased now to the new withdrawal management center. We have in our agenda package a letter from Mr. Di Tommaso, and I think he lays out the concerns that I have as well very well. And I think the key here is that we do have a new withdrawal management center, hopefully to open very soon. I'm not naive enough to believe that is going to be expanded in the short term from a 20-bed facility. But I really do believe that we should leave our options open, that should something come available to this municipality, to Sault Ste. Marie, in the sense of an expansion to the new withdrawal management center, then I think that we should have something ready on hand. And I also understand that the building that they are currently in at 145 Old Garden River Road has some room to expand within that building as well. But I guess I'm just looking at this in a very positive way, and I hope that the building that's there is not big enough to hold a possible expansion of that facility. And brings me to my position, believing that for now, I'm not suggesting that we should sell the property to Mr. Di Tommaso or to North Shore Sports, or to, I think the other option was to sell it to Walter and Roberta Pozniak, who put an offer in as well. My belief is right now that we should just pull back and hold on to this for now and see what options arise. And, having said that, I really do qualify that I don't expect something to happen next week, but this property has been, we've been holding it for a long time, hoping that we could have developed it in another way. That didn't pan out. We were lucky enough that North Shore Sports came forward and bought the front portion of that property, in front of that property. And that certainly, is a good economic spin for the municipality. And I also understand that if the other piece of property is purchased, that is going to generate tax revenue. But I think when we look at this, we have to weigh, the benefits to us in the long term. And I think there's really a benefit if we look at holding on to this for a while to see what becomes of this issue. So that's why I wanted to pull it. I'm just not in favor of selling the property. I believe the report says that the property should go to North Shore Sports. I'm not against selling them to them per se. I just don't want to sell the property right now at all. Those are my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Nero. Any other councillor have any comments? Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I just have comments. First, I want to say thank you to all the individuals that took their time to create that petition and to sign that petition. When I see so many names and so many individuals that come to council with a concern, it does grab my attention, and I'm sure it grabs my fellow councilors' attention. So again, thank you for doing that. I echo what Councillor Nero has said. I feel that this piece of property, we should just hold on to it for now. That particular part of our community is growing. That particular part of community is seeing more professionals moving up there. A recent bank just moved up in that area that opened, another financial institution, and other professionals from hospitals. They walk during their lunch period. And many people have come up to me in the past to say, wouldn't it be nice if we could have another green space up in that area so we can walk to and sit and have our lunch to create a community sense. And so I don't know exactly what we're going to be doing with that property, but it's a valuable piece. And who knows, maybe in the future, the ambulance base might move and give us a better chance to create some more green space or the feel of community up there. So I strongly feel that we should not offload this property, but hold on to it. And just there's some great ideas out there that could be coming to us in the future, and we just don't want to put ourselves in a corner at this time. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hollingsworth. Any other councillors want to make comments on this matter? Councillor Vezoel.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I share similar sentiments that I think we should hold on to this property. I am aware that there is a petition. However, my thoughts align more with Councillor Nero. We don't know what future may hold for this property. We are talking about the withdrawal management facility being there. And even if they can fulfill that facility, I would still like to see there be an opportunity to provide green space or meditation space and that sort of thing. I think that would be something additional to what we'd be able to offer in a withdrawal management, that it's not necessarily bricks and mortar, but having a positive green space can make a difference in that type of facility. I do agree that we don't have a lot of green space in that area, but we have a lot of commercial development and also residential. So we also have a Sioux College that's nearby as well that could utilize that property for some of their outdoor rec moving into the future. So at this point, I'm not comfortable with any of the proposals. I certainly respect staff. They were given that task to find surplus, and I realize there is a loss of revenue, but I think being forward thinking and future thinking, I think we should hold on to the property for now, and that's what I'm proposing as well.
Any other councillors have comments? Councillor Scott and then Councillor Hilsinger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to chime in saying that I think it's a great report. I think it's a great suggestion. I think that this is a very successful business that's looking to expand. Clearly, the Ricatas have shown that they are able to run a successful business in Northern Ontario. Brings in tons of people from around the community. They're very often the #1 selling recreational sports vehicles. I don't even remember what it is. I've heard it. Staff declared it surplus. We've been sitting on it for a while. I really don't see why we wouldn't go ahead with this. I like the idea of being supportive of the business community. I appreciate the comments from the other councillors. I really do. But I do think that this is a good fit for where they already are. I think it's a good option. I think it's a good plan, and I would just like to see it. So I'm definitely in support of staff's recommendation.
Just for clarity, Councillor Scott, we declared it surplus.
Sorry, yeah.
Councillor Hilsinger?
Misspoke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't need to repeat what Councillor Nero and Councillor Hollingsworth and Councillor Vezo-Allen said. I feel very strongly that this is not the right time after more consideration and looking at other opportunities or other things that could happen in the neighborhood. As Councillor Nero very clearly said, and I will reiterate, I am not against selling it to any person or entity or company or anything. I just think we need to sit back and reflect on this. We need to look at some of the ideas in our official plan, and we just need to sit tight for a bit and really consider what the best option is for the neighborhood, for the community, for their surrounding, for the surrounding area, just to see. And we sit tight for now. We look at other options. We come back and revisit this when we've had more time to think about it. Thank you.
Anybody else want to communicate or express comments or thoughts on this? Councillor Dufour?
I just have a question, if I may, Mr. Mayor. Mr. White, is there a precedent in our municipality for a council declaring a property surplus, reviewing the bids, and then selecting none of them, and then bringing it back for surplus later on?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour. I can't state whether there's been a precedent or not. Right now, I don't have that recall, but it's certainly within council's purview to take any action on the matter as you've described.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, council, we'll vote on this. Before we do, I just want to offer my thoughts just so the general public understands the way that I'm voting on it. We did declare the property surplus. We did put out a request for proposals on the property, and we had staff analyze those proposals and make a recommendation to us. And I agree that council can, at its prerogative, decide that it does not want to sell the property, notwithstanding that it went through that process. And if that's council's decision, I certainly will respect that. From my position, I am going to vote in favor of proceeding with the sale of the property. And I'm going to do that because for two reasons. One, I don't find the argument that we need to keep this in case there is growth in the mental health and addictions development, that we are prepared to meet that growth with additional land. I don't see any basis for that at this point. There's a couple problems or hangups I'd have with it. Back in 2017, Sioux Area Hospital asked for in the neighborhood of $5.5 million for operating and for $11 million in capital to construct a facility. And 4 years later, Sioux Area Hospital received $340,000. So we're not fully building out the current building that's there. There's more room in that current building, and I think there's probably more room in the footprint of that site. And I'm not optimistic that we are going to receive funds to such a degree that we are going to need additional property to develop additional infrastructure for those uses. The reality too, we have to appreciate is Sioux Area Hospitals is the care provider, and they've not reached out to us and communicated any interest in this property or any potential of maybe needing the property for additional mental health and addiction resources. So, I don't find that reason compelling. If council wants to hang on to it because council, thinks that there might be a better use in the future, I can understand that, and that's its prerogative. But from my perspective, the purchasers or the prospective purchaser of this property is a local business that wants to use the property as it is currently zoned. So the property is currently being sold with zoning that is fit to the buyer's use. So it doesn't require rezoning, it doesn't require a change of use. And frankly, there's a lot of levers. There's not very many levers we do have to support our business community, but the ones that we do have, it's important that we use those levers when they're in front of us. And it seems to me that the low-hanging fruit on this is helping a business that is hopefully growing in Sioux Ste. Marie and thriving, helping it to continue to grow and thrive, and supporting that business at its current location and making its current location an even better place for it to do business. So in that respect, I'm going to support the staff's recommendation. Madam Clerk, I don't recall, did you read the motion at the beginning of this?
I'm going to read the motion because it is a bylaw. So the vote that I've pulled up is for bylaw 2021-186, which is the motion by Councillor Scott and Vezo Allen. Resolved that bylaw 2021-186 being a bylaw to authorize the sale of surplus property being Civic 69 Old Garden River Road to Rocketta Holdings, Inc. be passed in open council this 27th day of September 2021, and it's open for vote.
So all in favor?
No,
Opposed? I think the motion's carried. Madam Clerk, could you tell me what the result of that was? So
It's a tie vote, 5-5, so it is defeated.
okay. So that is the result of that then. We will move on from consent agenda to the planning, back to the planning agenda, 7.7.3.
Mr. Mayor?
Official. Yes, Councilor Nero?
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I wasn't able to get in on time, but just before we voted on that bylaw. And I guess it's too late now because we voted on it. It just seemed that the bylaw, the way it was written, that we turned down selling the property to Mr. Rocketta Holdings, where the intent really was not to sell the property. So I didn't want. Change the word.
So Councilor Nero, they need the bylaw. So they had the staff report, but they need the bylaw to affect that legal process. So that's what the bylaw read. The property's not being sold now. That you don't need clarity. You don't need clarity on that.
I understand that, but if somebody reads that bylaw, it's left open that council did not want to sell it to Rocketta. Is my point I'm trying to make.
Well, the staff recommendation was to sell to a specific party, and that is what you just voted. That recommendation is what just didn't pass.
Yeah, I understand that. I
Okay.
just, if someone goes into the records and looks at the bylaws, that bylaw, the way it stands, is that council refused to sell it to Rocketta. Not the fact that council opted not to sell the property to anyone. That's the only point. I don't think we can change that.
Well, you can't change the bylaw. No, that's the bylaw was written to affect the sale of that property to a specific party.
I get it. It's just not the way I wanted to leave it, but I understand.
Okay, so we are going to move on to 7.7.3, official plan background report. Council, before we get too far into this, I'm going to make a comment and I'm going to give the floor to Peter Tenazzo, who is on the call and will be dealing with the official plan questions. This isn't on the agenda tonight for us to ask substantive questions on the official plan. There will be an opportunity for us to do that. I think the focus of this is it's really a procedural report that's on here, and we're starting the process of public consultation. So it's on here to begin that process. So any questions with respect to that, we're happy to take. If you want to get in the weeds on the document, there would be a more appropriate time to do that. The CEO could speak to that further if you have any questions about it, but we're going to have Mr. Tenazzo start the conversation and then we'll go from there. Peter, are you on the call here?
I am, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I will, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The official plan, it's our most important land use document. It sets out the overall framework for the physical development of the community. Of course, based upon the community's vision, projected growth over the next 20 years, and of course, the provincial policy statement, because we do work in a policy-led planning system here in Ontario. So the new OP will be based upon 8 overarching themes: building a healthy community, furthering environmental sustainability, promoting integrated mobility, increasing sense of place, ensuring sustainable growth, promoting economic resiliency, working towards social equity, and supporting cultural vitality. Now, the comprehensive background document that really is before council today, it's the culmination of significant background research and a fairly robust public consultation program over the last couple of years. The purpose of the document really is threefold. It communicates what we know, what we've heard, and what we propose. So on the what we know side, really it presents in one document a wide range of relevant data and information that is used and will be used to inform the policies of the new official plan. The what we heard section deals with, it shares the input, feedback, and key themes heard from the many residents and organizations that participated in the public outreach to date. And then finally, the what we propose. Each section has a what we propose part to it, where we basically communicate the key policy and in some cases very detailed policy directions for the new official plan. So going forward, this fall, planning staff, we will undertake a consultation program on this background report. And then based upon that, we will provide council with a full draft of the new official plan this January, at which point there will be another consultation program with the final official plan coming for council approval at some point in the early spring. Thank you very much. And if council has any questions, I'm certainly available to answer them.
Councilor Christian, I'm going to start with you because you dutifully held your hand up the whole time Mr. Tanasa was speaking.
My arm's sore. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I agree with you. There's a lot of information in that document, and I thank Peter for putting that together and giving us a preview. I only have a comment and a suggestion, and I direct it to Peter and to Mr. Ver. I'm going to sing the same old song. I hope we could reach out to our Sioux network, our expats from Sault Ste. Marie. It's good to have outside eyes and opinions, offering suggestions and feedback. I think that's important. I think it's good to it's healthy to have others looking at this as well. Certainly people in Sault Ste. Marie are stakeholders, need to have input by all means, but I do think it would be a worthwhile exercise if we could reach out to those others who are from the Sioux, love the Sioux, and want to see it grow. Thank you.
Okay, so I have, thank you, Councilor Christian. Any other, Councilor Vezawalan?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Tanat. So my only question, and it probably will happen during the consultation, is on page 46, when you're talking about downtown commercial development, that you're going to be looking at a revised approach. So can you just very briefly on a higher level explain what some of that is, especially when we're looking at in terms of all the investment that we're putting into the downtown with plaza and with what we had on the agenda tonight? What sort of encompasses that revised approach? Because what we see right now is per square footage, if you go on page 36, there's more vacant square footage downtown right now than there is on Great Northern Road. So just trying to get a framework of that and the approach and philosophy behind it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Vezawalan, good to see that you've gone into the detailed part here. In terms of the revised approach, that really speaks to a complete neighborhood versus really the previous approach, which was all about, you know, the downtown as the administrative center of the community. And that's not to say that it isn't and will not remain the administrative center of the community, but the previous approach almost forced major office space to locate. And this comment really relates to that office space piece, where the current OP policy is such that if you're above a certain size and your office space, you have to locate in the downtown. And that, for a variety of reasons, hasn't really worked for us. So what we're hoping is to look at the downtown as more of a complete neighborhood that includes, and certainly there's a place for that administrative office space to that, but includes more than just like that 9 to 5, right? Residential, after hour, sort of recreational spaces. So things like that. That's, I think, what we refer to when we mean the revised approach, if that answers your question.
I think so. I think just my main concern is the amount of vacant commercial space that was identified in the study, and ensuring that we still have incentives like we have with, you know, the patios, with the second story units and things like that. And I think that's really important because, while it is important to have people living downtown, it's really important to have people working downtown that grab their coffees and their lunches and go to the chiropractor on their lunch hours and things like that. So I would just like to see, as we move forward, something a little more solid around this revised approach. I think that's really important in terms of what we're trying to do with our downtown and our downtown revitalization plan. But thank you very much, Mr. Tanatso.
Thank you, Councilor Vezawalan. Is that the extent of your questions? Mr. CAO, Councilor Dufour's got a question here, and we're gonna let him ask it, but if it's too much into like the actual substance and details of the official plan, as opposed to process, I'll let you comment, and then you can kind of just explain to council why we're taking the approach we are. So Councilor Dufour, what were you looking for?
Well, I have a list of questions that are maybe more detailed on the data. I can ask some of the more general ones first, if that would be the preferred way to go here.
Yeah, well, before you do, Mr. CEO, just to give them some kind of, because you and I spoke about this earlier, just give council some kind of direction and clarity about the approach tonight. Maybe you can offer your perspective.
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour and the rest of council. Certainly bringing this forward to you tonight, first of all, lets you see the background package that was based on a lot of community input, as well as other research undertaken by the planning division. It is brought forward to you tonight to get officially tabled, and will serve now as a document for to provide more guided input from the community. So we will receive a lot of input over the next 2 months as planning goes out and gets that input. It will then be brought back to you along with that input. So as far as process goes, certainly you can look to have some clarity on something you may find in the background document, but you shouldn't be trying to elicit questions and elicit information in order to kind of change a view of what's in the background document per se. This is more a discussion paper that will go out to the community now, and we'll come back to you with that community input, at which time certainly that will be the point to elicit more of your views and look at other specific areas that you may either question or want to provide input on a potential change.
Is that sensible approach to you, Councilor Dufour?
Yeah, that's extremely helpful information, Mr. White. Thank you very much. With your preamble in mind, I do still have a few questions for Mr. Tonazzo, if that's okay. Mr. Tonazzo, one of my first questions is about the proposed amendment to the urban service area. Of course, that determines the size of our city. Can that urban service area be increased in the midst of an OP, or is this a decision that has to only be made in the context of a new OP?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Dufour, it can be done on its own, or it can be done as part of a comprehensive review of an official plan, or as part of a new OP. The provincial policy statement sets out the studies that you have to do in support of such an expansion. And really it's population projections, and then certainly a review of what land you have, which is a very extensive process. So it's generally not going to happen from an applicant standpoint. It's usually the city or the municipality that would undertake those studies, but they can be done whether they're applicant led or municipally led.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. Another question I had that I thought would be good for discussion comes from the section on housing mix. I noticed that that staff used Sault Ste. Marie's historical housing mix to develop our targets for future population growth. And I was wondering, are we able to also look at other communities that we could aspire to for different housing mix ratios, rather than just looking at historical levels in Sault Ste. Marie?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Dufour. And Councilor Dufour, maybe I'm not totally understanding, but we didn't just use historical housing mix for the basis of looking at what our future housing mix would look like. Certainly, we've seen a significant change in that housing mix in the last 15 years. We certainly have looked, and we do know what other communities, like-sized communities like Sault Ste. Marie, might have in terms of, and when you say housing mix, I'm assuming you mean singles versus semis versus apartments. And I would say we're generally on target with some of those other communities, whether it's Sudbury or North Bay, Thunder Bay. But we, just to clarify, and we can certainly talk about this a little more in detail if you'd like. We didn't just use sort of historical activity to come up with our projection.
Okay, that's helpful. I can pull up that one slide and talk to you about that later. But that's good to know that we're also comparing ourselves to other communities. And then most of my other questions center around furthering a discussion about the implications of more than doubling the allowable amount of space out the down, and kind of as Mr. White indicated this is going to be an evolving discussion as the community continues to engage with this document. And so I guess my position here and now would just be to encourage other community members to take a look at what is a very, very detailed and very well done report, and to also consider what kind of a downtown, what kind of a city is it that we want to imagine ourselves having over the next 10 to 20 years, because that's really what this guiding document it is going to help to dictate, and when we look at issues about urban sprawl, all of these things, these are all primarily informed by our official plan. So I encourage folks out there who are interested in those issues to spend some time with this document as we continue to engage with it. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Dufour. Any other councillors with questions with respect to this matter? Councillor Hollingsworth.
I just want to say is, like everyone else, it's a well-written document. And I truly look forward to hearing feedback from the community. I guess my main question through you, Mayor, to Mr. Peter Tanazzo. Environment is obviously number one concern, or our top concern for many of us around this table and our community. You touched on it briefly, I think on page 19 in your executive summary about prior to development occurring within or adjacent to natural heritage. So can you just in very high level general comment on how we're going to move forward in protecting our shoreline? How are we going to move forward in protecting our wetlands? Does that mean that we're going to be more stricter, maybe potentially, or are we still going to go to the Ministry of Environment to determine if areas shoreline can be altered, or is that still going to be under our domain as the final say?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, much of the natural environment piece as it relates to what can you do in proximity of a wetland, fish habitat, shoreline, that's dictated to us by provincial policy. We're proposing, obviously, this OP has to meet provincial policy. So there's a few moving parts here. If you want to develop within a wetland or within 120 meters of that defined the wetland, there's studies that you have to do, or you have to stay away from it. The same goes with fish habitat, other natural heritage features, including the shoreline, also keeping in mind that the Conservation Authority plays a role with some of these features, wetlands, shoreline. So I don't know that we're going to see much of a change, or at this point, the official plan doesn't propose significant changes to how we already operate or implement those existing regulations.
Okay, good. Thank you for the clarification. Again, our shoreline, our environment is so important. So I'm glad to see that we're staying the course. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. I didn't see any additional hands. Anybody else, Council? This is a big project to both Mr. McConnell and Mr. Tanazzo and the planning staff working on it. Thank you for your work to date. It's important that we go out to the community now and get a lot more feedback from them, and I look forward to returning from council so we can have a very substantive discussion about it.
We have a motion by Councillors Gardy and Vezo-Allen to receive the report as information, and it is open for a vote. I'm just waiting for a couple more.
All in favor? It's passed. I think, Madam Clerk, that brings us to 7-8.
Do you want to go back to 7.3.1 to the downtown plaza development?
Oh, geez, yeah, sorry, I skipped right over that for sure.
But that's because we've been bouncing around.
Yeah. Okay, yep, 7.3.1.
So I have a motion by Councillors Gardy and Bezo-Allen, resolved that the report of the Deputy CAO Community Development and Enterprise Services dated September 27, 2021 concerning the downtown plaza be received. Further, that council authorize an additional amount of up to $1,646,000 to come from the Canada Community Building Fund top-up funds to support plaza construction. Authorize city staff to submit relevant funding applications to support the plaza, including the Rural Economic Development Program in the amount of $250,000. Approve the plaza development with a total project cost of $8,447,068 with a total city contribution of up to $6,993,068 and expected annual operating costs of $265,000. Authorize staff to finalize the construction drawings and issue a tender for the construction of the downtown plaza with a plaza construction cost and fees estimated to be $7,844,000. There is a PowerPoint presentation that Deputy CAO there is going to present.
Okay, so council, we have the motion read. You have the report in front of you. We're gonna get Mr. Vare's report. And then once we have his report, I'll open the floor to questions of staff on either of the reports, and then we can have discussion after that. So Mr. Vare, it is you have the floor.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I just had to stop sharing my screen so that I could take myself off mute. And I will go back to the screen share here. Okay, can everybody see the screen of the downtown plaza presentation?
Yes.
Great. Okay, for a quick background to City Council, thank you for the opportunity to present tonight and provide an update to Council on the Downtown Plaza project. On August 9th, Council authorized staff to explore further funding options and revisit the design and also advance the fundraising campaign for the Downtown Plaza project. In terms of funding options, staff did identify one potential funding program to support the Plaza project, and that's through the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, their Rural Economic Development Program, or RED, which may provide up to $250,000 towards the Plaza project. And we're seeking council authorization to apply as part of this report. In terms of fundraising, the press release for the Plaza went out on September 8th, and to date, over $954,000 has been raised, which exceeds our initial fundraising target of $600,000. I wanted to mention the donors for the project. The Rotary Club, as council was previously aware, has donated $200,000 towards the Plaza project. Williams and McDaniel donated $200,000. Sue Mill supported the play feature of the Plaza project for $50,000. Tourism Sault Ste. Marie, the Board of Tourism Sault Ste. Marie recommended to council to use proceeds from the MAT proceeds for $250,000. Also, the Economic Development Corporation Board passed a resolution in support of using their reserve funds for $250,000 towards the Plaza project. We also had some donations from Canadian Banknote, $2,500, Royal Bank of Canada, $1,500. In addition, on Friday, we received confirmation of some additional donors I'd like to recognize. Crescent Engineering donated $5,000, Northern Credit Union, $5,000, and also Gary Trembinski Jr., $2,000, so additional $12,000. And we have a number of conversations going on with different organizations in town as well to support the Plaza project, which we hope will generate some additional donations in the future. So in terms of option, you'll see in the staff report, we provided 3 basic options for council. One was to stay within the current city approved contribution of $5.3 million. The second option was to a bit of a hybrid approach to reduce some of the features in the plaza in order to trim the budget. And the third option was to advance the plaza in full with the current design of the project and our estimated budget of the project. And that would see the city contribution increase to $6.9 million. So just a reminder for council and the public on the design of the plaza. I have a few updated slides that we'd like to share to show the current design as it sits for the plaza. And basically we divide the plaza into 3 main areas. There is the upper room. So at the top of the diagram, that's Queen Street. We call this the upper room. Then we have the lower room with the stage and the screen. And then we also have a parking area, which will be city parking available to the public in the southwest corner of the plaza project. The parking lot you see in the northwest, that is private parking related to Stone's Office Plus and their related businesses there. So going through the features of the plaza, we have the skating rink, which in the wintertime will take up a good chunk of the upper room of the plaza. In the summertime, we'll have a water fountain, which will be active. The jets are dynamic. They can go on and off and alternate. They can increase the flow or decrease the flow on different programs, and will be an attractive spot within the plaza in the warm months of the year. We have a new plaza building, which will be close to Queen Street, and that will house the change area for skate change in the winter or summertime related to the fountain. There will be public washrooms, which has been something lacking in the downtown for a number of years. We'll have an office space for our staff person that will be on site, and there will be a Zamboni garage as well. The layout of the new building, you'll also see a room that will contain the equipment for the fountain and the rink equipment for the ice rink in the wintertime. The stage and screen, this is an updated diagram of the stage structure and the digital screen that will be mounted on top. We have a play feature for the kids. We also have lots of, sorry, I'm getting behind in the slides here. We have lots of planting and trees to create a park-like atmosphere for people to sit and enjoy the plaza. And also, one of the features that we thought was important when we started to design the plaza was lighting. And we have a consulting team that has expertise in lighting. And they've put forward some great designs for the lighting scheme for the plaza. You can see here a decorative lighting element. The bottom left, you will see the different colors that will be helping to illuminate the stairs. And in the bottom right, also included is a projection screen that can project colors and images on the skating rink in the wintertime. You know, we think lighting is an important component of creating a great atmosphere there, and this will go a long way to creating a positive environment in the plaza. I think also critical to point out, aside from the infrastructure, you know, the goal of the downtown plaza is to activate the downtown and bring people into the downtown. And so we've got a number of ideas for programming and events in the plaza in concert with the BIA and different community stakeholders. And some of the events in the plaza include things like art shows, car shows, festivals, whether they be something like the Fringe Festival, Taste of the Sioux Festival, music festivals. We use that digital screen to, you can screen movies, you could have sporting events like we did with the Jurassic Park, video games, obviously outdoor concerts, dance and theater performances, cultural ceremonies and Indigenous ceremonies, Christmas events and lighting. Also the opportunity just for casual games, the outdoor chess, shuffleboard, in the winter, croquet curl, jam can curling, things like yoga and Zumba in the plaza, you know, food trucks and food events, interactive public art and lighting displays. So there's all kinds of ideas that staff are working on, again, with different community stakeholders to ensure that we program this plaza and make the most of this important resource in the downtown core. So considering the different options, staff are recommending that we utilize the Canada Community Building Fund to fill the gap of 1.64 million, I guess now 1.62 with our recent donations. This CCBF, we received one-time top-up funding of 4.4 million in 2021. So this is an addition to our more typical allocation of $4.6 million. Again, the amount required by the city could be reduced if we were successful in our RED application or through additional fundraising donations. And I think important to mention, if we were to utilize the CCBF, this would result in no levy impact to the citizens of Sault Ste. Marie as it relates to the capital construction of the plaza. And the city would still have $2.8 million, more than half of that top-up funding to allocate to other projects that are priority for the community. This slide just captures the budget, updated project funding slide. Again, would see the city share of the project be up to 6.9 million, less any funding or fundraising donations received from here out. In terms of the city contribution and where that money comes from, you will see here we included the use of the CCBF, and previously we used one-time gas tax funding to help support the plaza project. So those CCBF or gas tax funds, the total between those two items is $4.1 million. So the city would have been able to cover approximately 60% of the plaza costs or city share of the plaza cost from these one-time funds. In terms of next steps, staff are seeking council approval to proceed with the project with the total city contribution of 6.9 million. Should council approve, Brooke McElroy would finalize the construction drawings. A tender would be issued in January, with construction expected to start in the spring of 2022, and the completion either late fall 2022 or spring of 2023. So to close, just in summary, the Plaza project is based on best practices from other communities that have successfully revitalized their downtowns, research that we've conducted as staff, and also expert recommendations that have reviewed downtown Sault Ste. Marie. The downtown has been identified as a priority in our corporate strategic plan, also our downtown strategy document. And the downtown plaza investment is a strategic investment to help continue to move the downtown forward. Safety and security is a priority for the plaza and the downtown as a whole. The plaza will have staff present. We do have built into the budget security patrols at night, and we'll have more precautions in place to keep the plaza safe. And council is also aware that staff are working with other community stakeholders on broader downtown strategy for safety and security initiatives. Part of the rationale for investing in the plaza is to attract further investment from private sector into the downtown. And obviously council has already talked tonight about a major project proposed for our downtown, which is exactly the type of investment we hope to see in the downtown core and the type of momentum we want to build with the downtown plaza project. And finally, the downtown plaza as designed provides a 4-season destination for all ages in the community. It will serve generations to come, and it provides a platform for activities, events, food, drink, and retail that foster community spirit, improve quality of life, and create a more appealing downtown for residents and visitors. I think I would like just to close with a quote from Roger Brooks in his presentation. For downtowns, he had 4 fast facts, and the conclusion of number 4 was in economic development, tourism, and community development, there is absolutely, positively nothing that is more important than your downtown. And that is why we believe the Downtown Plaza project is an important component of our downtown revitalization strategy. I'll stop there, Mr. Mayor, and happy to take any further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bear. Appreciate your presentation. I have a list going, so I will start with, I see your hand, Councillor Vezoal, and I'll put you on the list. I'm going to start with Councillor Christian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really don't have any questions. I have comments, and if you'd like, I can hold those till later.
No. I'm at you. We'll come to you now. You say what you want to say, and then we're done with you.
Okay. Well, I am in favor of the plaza. I was from the beginning. You know, as Mr. Ver pointed out, we've invested a lot of money in the downtown core, and it's part of our strategic plan. And I just I see that this is a natural progression into our overall goal. I don't think we could lose sight of the fact that our downtown, as Mr. Brooks pointed out through Mr. Ver's presentation, is the downtown is vital, and it's specifically ours. Ours has historic significance, not only for the community, but also for the province and the nation. And I think developers like Mr. Giomi tonight see that. We're beginning to create some density in the downtown. We're evolving, and people like him see this, right? It's going to take some time, but I think we as a council need to do our part. There are naysayers, and I understand that it is a pretty expensive price tag, and quite honestly, I'm not comfortable with the price, but I do believe in the development. And I understand the concerns of others in the community. You got to recognize that it's not increasing the levy. We're going to fund this internally. And we need to take a brave step. I mean, there have been naysayers for many developments in Sault Ste. Marie. Back in the 60s, when they were looking at redeveloping the waterfront, there was pushback. And Mr. McConnell can tell you that we went forward and developed our waterfront, and we were nationally recognized for the effort. Mr. Irwin was before council not too long ago, and he spoke about where City Hall was being moved to the waterfront, and there were people pushing back on that. Even the GFL arena had naysayers, but I want everybody to think about what our community would look like if we didn't take those bold steps. As Mr. Ver pointed out, this is an investment in our community. Mr. Tanasso, in his report, identified 3 things that we need to do as a community. We need to recruit people, we need to repatriate people, and we need to retain people. There are a lot of dynamics converging right now in our community. And to me, this sets us up very well for what's coming in the future. We are going to have immigration in our community. We have to create a community that's more than we have now. We have to cater to younger people coming here. We have to do our best to be a dynamic community. I don't think.
Councillor Christian, we lost you there at probably a really inopportune time, because you were really doing a great job, but I can't hear you at all or see you. So listen, I'm going to go back to Paul when he gets back on, but next on my list is Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I am in favor of the plaza, but at the original cost of the 5.3 million. So my question to Mr. Ver is regarding the ice surface. What would the savings be if the ice surface was not installed? And the reason why I'm asking this question is in the area, you do have the John Rosewell Trail that city staff puts a beautiful skating path. And also if by the new bus terminal, there is a nice surface installed during the winter time. So I guess my question to Mr. Ver is, what is the savings? And I also believe a water park is necessary there. It should stay, but what would the savings be if the ice rink would be removed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, the approximate cost of the ice rink, the equipment is about $840,000. If we didn't proceed with the ice rink, we may also be able, or we would also be able to decrease the size of that building because we do have a Zamboni garage attached to it. And some of the footprint may be able to decrease. Just a note that we included in the council package that removal of the ice rink feature, we would have some increased costs as it relates to redesign of the building and the features there if we did go that route. And then to your point about the Clerk Park skating trail, one thing, we have enjoyed a couple good winters with that trail and cold temperatures, but our public works staff do remind us we've had other winters where we've had warmer temperatures and we haven't had the rinks available outside of 10 days. So having a rink with compressors certainly would allow us to make sure we have a nice surface in the colder weather. And that's a nice surface that's going to be free for the public to use at all times. So that's part of the differentiator with this rink in the Plaza project, as well as being a feature to animate the Plaza in the wintertime.
Thank you very much. And that's all I have.
Okay, so thank you. And council, just for a procedure and a process before kind of I move on here to Councillor Nero, who's on my list. What we're going to do first is vote on the staff recommendation. And if that passes, the discussion is over. If it fails, then we'll take a motion from the floor for essentially a redesign project that council would ultimately approve. Seeing as I think proceeding was approved by a 10-1 vote, staff was working on, the presumption that one of the iterations of the project would be approved. And I think that's a fair presumption that they were working on, but it's the sensible thing from our perspective is to start with the staff resolution. If that fails, we will move on from there. So Councillor Nero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few questions for Mr. Ver. Mr. Ver, this first question is regarding the Canada Community Building Fund. Are there restrictions on what are the restrictions on the use of that fund? Are we able to use it at our disposal for anything that we want, or specifically for certain projects that fit?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, there's actually 18 different buckets that you can use the Canada Community Building Fund for. So there is quite a bit of latitude for council to use that funds. As it relates to the Plaza, you're allowed to use CCBF funds for recreation, culture, tourism assets in your community, and certainly all of the above would apply related to the downtown Plaza.
Would they be able to be used for infrastructure replacement, those kinds of things as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, yes, that's correct. They are able to be used for those types of things.
Okay. Thank you for that. The second question is regarding the contributions from Tourism Sault Ste. Marie. In your report, it says that it's going to be the $250,000 over the 2 years through either the Tourism Development Fund or the Tourism MAT proceeds. Now, either one of those, my understanding, the Development Fund is what's left after the original marketing fund that they had is left over and it's split 50-50 with the city. So they're either going to use that 50% portion or they're going to take it directly from their 4% taxation on hotels and motels. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, yes, that's correct. In the tourism board, they have a strategy session planned for October 14th. So they wanted to deliberate on exactly where the money was going to come from, but they did pass a resolution recommending the use of the MAT funds for the Downtown Plaza project. And those two buckets are correct the way you described them.
Okay, and I'm clear on that. I want to be clear for any of our viewers is that none of those funds, either they be Tourism Development Fund or the MAT proceeds, are tax dollars that come from our levy.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, yes, you're correct. And thanks for that clarification. I think it is important The contribution from the Tourism Sault Ste. Marie Board, those are from the MAT proceeds. So that's the municipal accommodation tax that is attached to the room stays in Sault Ste. Marie. And the Tourism Board makes recommendations on how to spend that money to advance the tourism economy. The board felt that the Downtown Plaza project obviously was an important component of tourism and the appeal of the community, and they made the resolution to support it. As well, for the EDC, the Economic Development Corporation had a reserve with funds in it that was generated from activities of the Economic Development Corporation, and they are applying that reserve fund to support the Plaza project as well. They had identified downtown revitalization as one of the number one economic development goals when they did their strategy session.
Good. You, Mr. Ver, you brought me into the second part of my question, which would be the EDC contribution. Thank you for that. And on that, I want to also make sure that we understand that there are lines in our budget for both EDC and tourism. Those lines, correct me if I'm wrong, they are for the staff that run the operations of both those corporations. They are not they're not part of this money that we're talking about that the contributions are coming from.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Nero, I just correct one thing in that the city, when we brought in the staff for economic development and tourism, they are on the city payroll, and we brought back that budget. So we are managing and oversee the staff. We do have those two boards, and those two boards provide recommendation on, in the case of tourism, the spending of the MAT funds, and they have control directly over the 767 or the MAT proceeds that go directly to them. And then we have the TDF and the city share. Right. And then on the EDC front, they're providing recommendation to council on our economic development activities, and they do have that reserve fund, which they control directly. But the activities of the staff and the budgets for the staff, yes, are part of the city budget, and they're overseen directly by the city. Okay.
And just one further question on that one. That surplus fund that the EDC has right now, that the 250,000 is being drawn from, would there ever be a case that the EDC would have to run or use their surpluses to run operations, and we would have to put funds from city levy back into those surpluses?
And through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Nero, no. We have the budget now within the city to run those operations with the staff, and that reserve fund is separate and apart from the city. And when we incorporated the staff, we left those reserve funds as a strategic fund that board could control and invest into economic development activities.
Okay. When in the previous model for the EDC, the city, what was levied by the city to the EDC leveraged other funding from other corporations, which also went into those surplus funds. That was not just city money that was in there, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Nero, that's correct. That's not city money that's in that reserve.
Okay, thank you. And I think Mr. Mayor, it's my last question. Mr. Mayor, is the Downtown Plaza the kind of project that we could do naming rights for, say, to cover the operating costs, the ongoing operating costs, which does come from our city levy?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Nero, that could be an option. We did not have that as part of our fundraising package when we went out to the market. If council were to direct us to do so, we could try and do that, but that wasn't part of our initial fundraising package. Right.
Would we have kind of impacted that decision by the contribution part going from donations, where a number of different companies and individuals have already contributed, and then we go out for naming rights? Would that be something that could still be done?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Nero, and I guess in theory it could be done. We have kind of gone out to different organizations and received those funds for different elements of the plaza already. So it could create some difficulties or confusion as it relates to the sponsorship of those different program elements within the Plaza project.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Those are the extent of my questions. Mr. Mayor, I supported this from the start. I was concerned when we did not get the funding from NOHFC that we had to find the $2 million. And my concern was that it would come from our general levy at the time. And I really was not supporting that type of funding to come from our general levy. Seeing that Mr. Vera put this package together, and hopefully there is more coming, that we could reduce the amount of the Canada Community Building Fund. I think you mentioned, Mr. Vera, that we would have somewhere around $2.8 million left for city use if the plaza goes ahead and we use the 1.64. So I'm happy to hear that part of it. It is an expensive project. Not going to repeat what Councillor Christian said. I agree with some of the comments that he made. It's something that, you know, we have to do downtown. It's a big step, but I think it's necessary. It's needed. I think that once it's there in its entirety, because at first I thought that we could, you know, rejig this whole project and start taking pieces out, and I don't know what would we be left with. Anything that's significant is a vital part of the project, so I certainly can't see taking out, you know, a major component of it. It's to make it work, it has to have those major components. So I'm going to support it. I've always believed in the concept that if we're going to get downtown back to where it should be, that we have to draw people downtown. And again, as was said earlier, this development that we heard about tonight on our agenda at the brewery block is just in addition to this, and it complements it. And I'm going to support the project. Thank you, Mr. Vera.
Thank you, Councilor Neer. And I think you make an important point. You know, I took a number of councilors' comments the last time this was before us to indicate they didn't want the additional funding to come from municipal tax dollars. And I think it's important to recognize that the funding staff has proposed is frankly federal funding, and it doesn't come from that municipal tax dollars, although I acknowledge we could use it for other things, but that applies to, you know, a number of the pots of funds we receive. So I have a long list here, and move on to Councillor Vezo-Allen.
I'm going to keep it very brief, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Ver, the only comments that I have been getting from constituents is sort of, you know, why aren't we investing in the Bondar Pavilion and we're doing this separate plaza? So I just want you to outline in your report, which I can read, but just for, you know, people that are listening, the importance, especially in terms of capacity, barrier free, how it's free to the public, and that sort of thing. That would be, I think, extremely useful.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen, a few things. I think with the Bondar Pavilion, it serves as obviously a great large event space, and it's a great showpiece on our waterfront. And we'll continue to actively, you know, program that and work with community organizations to do that. I think with the downtown plaza, one of the key things from Roger Brooks and the other best practices we've looked at is that downtown plaza really needs to be as close to the commercial strip as possible. So rather than investing in other amenities, say in the Bondar Pavilion, to drive more people there, we felt the best strategy would be to have the plaza, as it's located close to the downtown businesses. It's going to provide an opportunity for events and programming that will bring people to the downtown and benefit the businesses there, working with the BIA to have events there, and the two can be complementary. And we believe, you know, both these things are, again, going to help to advance the Downtown Plaza project. As you mentioned, the Downtown Plaza will have the rink and those features which are going to be free for the public to use and available, you know, at all times during the week when the plaza is open for anyone to come down and use those facilities in that barrier-free environment.
Right, and I think that was the one thing I wanted to touch on is, you have the Bondar Pavilion where you could have a graduation with 5,000 people, whereas this would be more into it with 150 to 300 people. So it's like comparing apples to oranges. And I think it is really important to identify that the skating surface, I think, is much different than what we see at Clerk Park. So it's going to be a smaller surface, correct, Mr. Ver? So like beginner skaters or seniors would probably feel more comfortable there, that there wasn't someone kind of speed skating beside them, that it's, if you could explain the actual size of the rink and its purpose would be very helpful.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezowalan, yes, that the rink feature in the plaza, it will be a smaller ice surface. Basically, the mound where the fountain will be in the summertime will be a structure with trees, and people will be able to loop around the skating plaza. It obviously will be a compressor system that will allow us to maintain that ice and the quality of the ice. So I think it will be a friendlier ice surface for beginners at all times of the year when the ice surface is running. And I do see it as that type of friendly, relaxed environment for families and people to come down and enjoy that ice surface for a casual skate.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Ver. I was fortunate to watch Robert Brooks's presentation when it was at the machine shop, and I've always been supportive of this project. And I think it will create something that our city's never seen, and I think it will improve our downtown tenfold more than we'll ever know. And thanks, Tom and the team, for all the work that's been happening with this. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Vezowalan. So I've got Councillor Gardy and then Councillor Shoemaker.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. That means I can proceed.
Yeah, you're next.
Yeah, thanks. So I think Mr. Ver's answers to Mr. Nero's very insightful questions was very helpful, I think, not only to the people around this table, but to the community at large, in putting into perspective that it does not have any impact on the levy, which is important. I'm very comfortable in supporting the plaza. We've been talking for years about revitalizing downtown. This is revitalization. We put a lot of work in to Bay Street. We put a lot of work into some other parts of the area. And I think that we should be maybe a bit optimistic in getting some funds from the funding envelope that Mr. Ver identified in his slide project. So we might get some additional assistance that way. I am hopeful that council is going to support it as it is in front of us this evening. In fact, I'm quite confident, based upon the comments that preceded me, that it will proceed in that fashion, and I'm looking forward to it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gardy. And nice, Councillor Shoemaker's next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Ver. Mr. Ver, you talk about the plaza being in proximity to the main business core in response to Councillor Vezowalan's questions, but I mean, that's only true, and I'm looking for your perspective on this, that's only true of the businesses immediately surrounding there. I mean, for businesses like Shabby Motley, Outspoken Brewery, and the IDA General Store, they're closer to the Bondar Pavilion than they will be to this plaza. So how do you square the circle of the fact that it needs to be helpful to everybody in the business district, but it's further away from some than our existing plaza?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, I think two things. Certainly when we looked at the recommendations to locate it as close as possible to the commercial strip, we do have a fairly long linear downtown. So one of the challenges we had was just finding a location that would be appropriate and suitable for a plaza project. And we think we found that using the former Bingham parking lot. But to your question, I think, it's really the activation of that space and bringing the foot traffic down and getting people frequenting the downtown, which will help, rising tide floats all boats, which will help the businesses located in the downtown. And we'll certainly look for different ways to collaborate with the businesses, through the plaza and through the events and activities with the BIA to try and ensure that, as many businesses as possible benefit from that plaza being located in the downtown core.
And with respect to, thank you for that answer. With respect to the request for the funding from the, whatever it's called, the additional gas tax funding, what have we been using that funding on historically? I know this is a top up per se, but what have we been using the regular funds we've been getting from the gas tax on historically?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, I may allow others to comment on this. When we had the previous gas tax one-time top up in 2019, we used 2.5 million to initially support the Plaza project. I believe prior to that, it had been mainly used for roadworks projects, but I'll let others confirm that.
Maybe Michelle can offer her perspective there. Did you have anything to add to that, Shelley?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The only other time we received a gas tax top up that I can remember is in 2019. And as Mr. Ver indicated, we used 2.5 million for the Plaza project at that point. The total amount was around the same amount that we're receiving with the 2021 top up. So it was just over $4 million. The balance in 2019 went to roads. Our normal gas tax funds, or as it's called now, the Canada Community Build Fund, the annual amounts are fully allocated to road projects, and it's only with the top ups that we have been using it for some other projects, as has been recommended tonight for the 2021 top up as well.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Shoemaker?
Yes, it sounds like essentially if we, unless council directed otherwise, we'd probably be using these funds for roads if it didn't go towards the plaza.
I think that's a fair comment.
Not for the top up funds, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, go ahead, Michelle.
The top up funds are over and above our regular annual allocation, and those have been, as was done in 2019, council was provided a recommendation from staff where we looked at capital projects that weren't funded and that were prioritized, and provided that list to council to make, to approve where they go. But on the regular amounts that we receive each year, it gets allocated to roads.
So if council decided not to use the money for this purpose as recommended tonight, staff would then make recommendations on capital projects to apply this money to.
Yes, that has not been done yet, and a report still needs to come to council on that.
Yeah, I understand. And why would you have done it? Because this is the recommendation, right? Yeah. Councillor Shoemaker?
Yeah, thank you. That kind of explains it, except that I think that Shelley's previous comment, or Ms. Shell's previous comment, was that other than the portion, the 2.5 that was allocated to the plaza in 2019, the rest of it essentially got allocated to road work. So while council would have the ultimate discretion in where it went, the one-time historical trend on this is that a good chunk of it went to road work other than the stuff that went to the plaza. With respect to option 1 and 2, I didn't see a ton of difference in those two options, Mr. Ver. Option 1 obviously details out specific items that'll get us to the total. And option 2, I think, if I'm reading it correctly, details that other proposal or other configurations could be brought forward to reduce the scope, but maybe not to the 1.6 million. Am I reading that correctly?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker. Yes, that's correct. Option 1, I guess, had more detail on all the different options. And then option 2 was really if council wanted to reduce the budget somewhat, but not to the extent of the 1.6, there are features that could be pulled out of the plaza.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think everybody around the table has in some vote supported the plaza conceptually since it's come before council, and I've supported it conceptually as well. What I'm having a hard time supporting is the actual cost of the proposal before us. So I am fully supportive of putting a plaza down there at our original contribution amount of 5.3 million. I think you would have unanimous support of council if that was the number before us. And if tonight's first vote fails, that's what I'll be putting forward, to bring in a plaza at 5.3 million with the final design to be brought to a future council meeting, perhaps the next council meeting. But in terms of actually adding an additional 1.6 million into the project that we haven't received funding for, I think our responsibility as councillors makes it incumbent on us to find the savings rather than to go forward with the more expensive project. And it appears from the comments I've heard tonight that isn't going to be the majority consensus, but certainly that's, I think we could have a lovely, functional, well-used plaza downtown for a city contribution of 5.3 million. I don't think it needs to be 6.7 million or whatever it is that alternate number is. So those are my comments and my questions, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. So next I have Councillor Dufour and then Councillor Scott.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Most of my questions were actually covered in great detail by Councillor Nero. So all I have left are comments, and my comments are these, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to speak a little bit about the experience of homelessness and mental health in the downtown. I know, from talking to some folks, even talking to some people around this table, that, one of the concerns that has been on our mind has just been the experience of mental health and addictions downtown over the last year and a half. And I just want to validate those experiences. It's been a rough year and a half at times downtown, but I think it's really important to look at how we got there. Over the last year and a half, our detox facility in Sault Ste. Marie was shut down, closed down, then moved. We've had significant difficulties with our shelters. All of these problems that we've been having, different agencies like social services, like the hospital, have been working on many solutions, many of which actually are scheduled to come online when the plaza is complete. Come next September, we'll have a brand new men's shelter, a lot more transitional housing in the community. We will actually have the new and improved detox facility open. And not one of these things is a magic bullet for the problems that we've experienced, but they are significant parts of what the ecosystem of a solution is going to be. And for that reason, Mr. Mayor, it's been a really important part of my own considerations to remember that we need to build the downtown that we want it to be, and not just to look at what the short-term difficulties have been and build to that, but to build to what we once had in our downtown. And I remember very well all the great street parties of even just 2016, 2017. I remember what the downtown looked like when there was, upwards of 4,000 people for some of your first Christmas tree lighting ceremonies, Mr. Mayor. And I certainly believe that we can get back there. I certainly believe that we have a community of people that are yearning for the days when, quite frankly, we can enjoy those kinds of events again. And I think it's really important that council show some leadership on this file and show some vision in building to that view of what downtown is going to be over the years to come. So for those reasons, I will be strongly supporting staff's recommendation. I thank staff for finding an option that does not simply go to the levy. And I support the use of these one-time gas tax funds to build what I think is an important project. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Dufour. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, the first question that I have is going to be one that came up while other questions were being asked through you, Mr. Mayor, to Michelle. If you happen to have it offhand, do you know how much we've actually put into this project thus far? You mentioned that we used some of the, is it called CCBF now? Toward it.
The budget for the project is in the report, including the first gas tax top-up allocation that we've.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I must have missed that part. My apologies then. You know what? If it's available to the public, then that's fine. I won't scroll through and look for that. My next question would be through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Ver. Could you refresh, because it isn't on this one. I know we did receive it. What's the rough breakdown of the operating costs, the 265,000? What's that roughly break into in categories?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Scott. Basically, the rough categories are related to salaries. So we would be looking at about $110,000 through the year in salaries. Part of the winter would be the operator related to the rink. And then also in the summer months, we would have programming staff and also some summer students attached to the plaza. And then we have the utilities for the plaza, roughly $84,000, water and electric. And also small amount budget for materials and supplies of about 13,000, and then purchase services for things like security, programming for artists and performers, some advertising and marketing that would total about 33,000. Small allocation for capital equipment, which would bring that cost in outside of the small revenues for about 265,000.
So we're lumping in the security portion with other purchase services like marketing. How much of a security presence were we expecting to have in the area?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Scott, we were basing that off the contracts that we have related to the boardwalk. So we allocated approximately $20,000 related to security services.
Okay, thank you for that. And this, the operating obviously does come from the levy, yeah?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Scott, that's correct.
Okay. And then my next question would be, actually, you know what? I think the question's been asked, and I just wanted to keep that brief, but I'll jump to my comments on it. And it's no secret that I've voted against this the last time it came forward. And I think I'm going to continue on with that simply because I do agree with how the NOHFC laid it out. I do think that it's kind of a hat on a hat situation. We have a lot of amenities downtown that are within very close distance of each other. I can appreciate the thoughts and the ideas behind the plaza. I really do. I think this has been great work. And I think one of the other councillors said it. I'm not against the idea of it. I just don't know that the timing is right. I think that there's a lot of other infrastructure we could be using the CCBF funding for. I know we've kicked the can on the Sackville extension a lot, and I think that that would be a prime candidate, especially for the top up. Ultimately, it does sound as though it may be going through, but I just want to chime into my comments there and let the public know why I'm voting the way I'm voting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. So I think we've covered everybody. I need to circle back to Councillor Christian. Before I do that, do any other councillors who haven't had an opportunity yet want to? So yeah, so what I'll do is Councillor Christian, I'm going to go Hilsinger, Hollingsworth, and then I'm going to come to you. And then I'll have some comments and we'll wrap up with the vote on this matter and we'll move on if we need to. Councillor Hilsinger, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think we need to 150% fully commit to staff's recommendation. This project has involved a lot of work, a lot of expert advice, a lot of information on best practice, showing us what makes a downtown successful. We cannot become what we want if we remain who we are. And this is a 4-season opportunity. Arts, culture, recreations, gatherings. It's going to completely change the downtown. We have to have faith and we have to find a way to do it. And we've seen how businesses are coming forward and investing their own private sector money into this project. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take a big contribution on our half. We have to stick with the plan. We have to ride through the nervousness And our community is going to be so proud of what happens with this site. We're going to see people using this year round. We're going to see how it is going to support our tourism industry and our development. And I just can't wait to get started and to see it become a reality. I'll be voting definitely in favor.
Thank you, Councillor Hilsinger. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Just a question to Mr. Vare. Just to wrap up some of this conversation, just to make it clear, going back to Councillor Shoemaker's point about 5.3 million. If hypothetically we stick to our guns and say we just want to spend $5.3 million, what does that give us? Just to recap it again, does it give us the ice rink, maybe a smaller scale? It sounds like it gives us the water fountain play area. It sounds like the children's area is still there. Just to again recap, the 5.3 gives us what?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. When we looked at it as staff, in order to get down to the 5.3 million, really the only way we could see doing that would be removing the ice rink feature and decreasing the size of the building. As mentioned earlier, it does come with some additional costs we'd have to do as it relates to the architects and the service design, et cetera. But that's the only way that we could see getting the project back down to 5.3 million, taking out a major component like the ice rink and features of that building.
So out of curiosity, you say that you have to take those out. Have you gone back to the experts to say what would a different ice rink look like? I mean, we talked when we did the twin pad, we had this discussion, what other ice rinks and what other mechanics would, lower that cost. I mean, is it possible to still have an ice rink where someone hand floods it? Is it possible to have an ice rink that's a little bit more natural? I mean, it's just like you want to buy I don't know, hypothetically, a new RV and you still can get it. It's just a smaller scale. I mean, you sure there's nothing else we can do to still have the ice rink under a price of 5.3?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, I think two things. One would be, if you wanted to have a rink that operates on a compressor system that kind of guarantees the ice in the colder season, November to March, the size of the rink that we have now, the consultant team that we're working with, who has worked with a number of other communities and designed rinks and looked at other comparators, you don't want to go really any smaller than the rink they have designed in the plaza now. It's at a size that's, we believe, sized right for the community and also just have a functional space for people to skate. And then to your other point, could you create, a more typical rink that's just flooded? It would be certainly weather-wise. The PW folks are definitely suggesting, encouraging a rink that has compressors in order to ensure we can have ice in that plaza. And then the second thing is you could have a rink that was, hand flooded, but then you would be putting up boards or some kind of barrier around it to contain the water, and it would be a different ice system, obviously, than the one that's proposed now.
Okay, and I know we're going around again, but going back to the building, I know you like the change rooms, you like the washrooms, which are necessary and, for equipment, but it just must be a way to just curve it down to closer to 5.3 or even 5.5, but okay, thanks for clarifying. I wish it was 5.3 as well, but thank you.
Councillor Christian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I apologize. I'm having all kinds of technical problems here. Just a couple of, I have one question for Mr. Vare, and I apologize if it was discussed while I was off, but can you just briefly describe to me where we're at in terms of the fundraising process itself? Have we exhausted all of our contacts? Where exactly are we?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian. It's a good question. We launched that campaign on the 8th. And so we have a number of active conversations now, I would characterize them, with different businesses in the community. As well, we had the social media campaign, and we had the mail out actually email to the Sioux Network. And so we're still receiving donations. People in some cases, are mailing those in using the form that we had with checks. So we're still in the process of receiving those donations.
I have a follow-up question when it comes to fundraising, and I'm not sure if you can answer this because I don't know if we can actually do it as a municipality, but I'll ask the question and wait for feedback. Is it possible to solicit any of the current suppliers we have, or would that put us in a conflict of interest with them in the future when it comes to procurement? Because I know in certain circumstances, some organizations have done that. They've reached back to their suppliers and asked them for donations. Is that even possible as a municipality?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I see that CEO White took his mic off mute, so maybe I'll let him answer that question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian. I would be very careful about him embarking on a process like that, and it would be a process that we would have to very clearly vet through our purchasing process and through our legal.
I agree. I just thought it was worth posing so I can live with a clear conscience that I asked. And Mr. Vera, you made the point that you have reached out to the Sioux Network. I still am confident that we'll get something from those people. Mr. Mayor, I just, if you don't indulge me for 1 minute and I'm done, I just wanted to close my comments before I got cut off that, this is what we call progress. It's not always easy, but this is an investment and it's progress. I appreciate the comments Mr. Ver made about the fact that some people in the downtown core may not be part of what we call the immediate vicinity of the plaza, but we have to look at the plaza as a vehicle to drive business. And I really think it's up to the BIA to work with their fellow businesses to promote and encourage marketing strategies. If there's a lot of activities there's lots of opportunities to promote. So although it might not be perfectly centered in the downtown core, it's there, and I think it will serve the purposes it's intended. Much like all of council voted to go big with the Twin Pad Arena and go as far as to put an extra $1 million for a walking track. This is a little bit different. I view this as economic development and the revitalization of the downtown. Although it costs more than we had hoped, it's vital. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so I want to start by just thanking staff for really what I think is excellent work. And I want to just point a few things out for the purpose of the general public following along on this story. This comes after years of working collaboratively with community partners, hiring a consultant to study these issues, taking recommendations and looking at best practices in other municipalities, and really applying ourselves to the question of how we can improve our downtown. I think you've seen a significant improvement in Bay Street. There's plans for Spring Street. Queen Street is on the books, but we still needed a heart, a center. And this project has been an exciting project from the get-go. And, I had a meeting with Mr. McDaniel after he had committed his donation to thank him for it. And he talked about how, and he told me I could share these comments, how impressed he was with how forward-looking the Sault Ste. Marie was, and how really productive he thought this project would be for our downtown. I just want to look at all of the private sector operators who are putting significant money into their building. The Village Media Building, you have the IDA Building, you have the Queen Center, you have young entrepreneurs that just opened a business downtown. They've reached out to me and asked me about this project and its likelihood of proceeding. We have Mr. Giomi having the condo suites being proposed, and we're hopeful that will move forward. Him and I have talked about this project, and he's indicated to me how productive and important he thinks the project is. So it's a project that comes after a lot of work. It's a thoughtful project. And frankly, staff landed this project within the budget that council asked them to land it in. We did not get provincial funding for this. And one of the reasons why I believe we did not get provincial funding for this was we got a significant amount of provincial funding for our arena. And I'd remind council that all of you were willing to finance $30 million for a function. Now, when we look at that arena, that was a project that was started years ago. And the council of the day decided not to do that project in full. And if the council of the day decided to do that project in full, we wouldn't have had to look at a $30 million project. Nothing gets cheaper. Everything gets more expensive. And if we leave important projects off the table, we say we'll come to it later, we'll do it in the future, we'll do another part of it in the future, it is just going to get more expensive. I think we can all agree that this is a project that is open to the entire community. It's a project that the entire community can receive the benefit of. And I think it will go a far way in improving our downtown and the activity downtown. So I'd like to thank everybody who has worked on it to date. I'd like to thank council for its consideration to date. It's been on this project a number of times. It's been before you a number of times. You've thoroughly looked at it a number of times, and I think you've always made the right decision when it was a decision point. But if something is worth doing, it's worth doing properly. And in my opinion, we should proceed with the project as soon as we can, as the project is developed and as it was presented to us. In that respect, I am going to strongly support it tonight and vote in favor of it. Madam Clerk, if we can have the vote on the staff motion, and then we'll go from there.
Just waiting. I am waiting for a few. Councillor Bruni.
So all in favor? Opposed? So there's 3 opposed, there's 8 in favor. So it would be 8-3.
That is correct.
Okay. Project is approved. So that brings us to motions, Madam Clerk.
I've got one more before that. Under 7.8.1, there is a vacancy on the Downtown Association Board of Management. So I have a motion by Councillors Scott and Bezo-Allen, resolved that the report of the City Clerk dated September 27, 2021 concerning Downtown Association Board of Management appointment be received, and that Nicholas Rossett be appointed to the Downtown Business Improvement Area Board of Management from September 27, 2021 to November 14, 2022.
Any questions or comments on this, council? All in favor? Approved.
That will bring us to agenda item 8.1. It's a motion by councillors Shoemaker and Hilsinger, whereas for many years, Peapatch residents have had concerns about traffic congestion at Pine Street and Pleasant Drive. And whereas an environmental assessment in 2015-2016 studied the issue and recommended the opening of an unopened road allowance running between Northern Avenue through Panoramic Drive to Princeton Avenue. And whereas the project has been in the 5-year capital plan since 2017 and the road is slated to be opened in 2021. And whereas most every street name in the Peapatch begins with the letter P, and the Peapatch access road is as of yet unnamed. Now therefore be it resolved that the Peapatch access road be named Passchendaele Lane after the Battle of Passchendaele, where Canada's international reputation was cemented during the First World War, and where local Victoria Cross recipient Sergeant William Merrifield fought valiantly and was awarded the military medal for his bravery in that battle. And I would just point out correspondence was received that appeared on the addendum.
Councillor Shoemaker, I'll go with you because this is your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be relatively brief. I think it's a motion that I hope all of council will support. as I was looking for words that began with P that weren't already taken, because there's about 30 roads in the P patch already, I went to the Canadian Encyclopedia. I did a bunch of research first, and ended up at the Canadian Encyclopedia, where you could search by alphabet. And the one term that kept coming up under P was Passchendaele, and I think anyone who's taken grade 10 history knows that Passchendaele was an important battle in Canadian history. But as I dug further into it, I was reminded, I think I knew at some point, but I was reminded of the local connection between the Passchendaele battle, the Battle of Passchendaele, sorry, and William Merryfield's heroics in the First World War. And the Merryfield family, of course, is prominent in town, having owned Verd's Hardware for a number of years, and having donated Sergeant Merryfield's Victoria Cross medals to the Canadian War Museum a short while ago. So it was one that honored a historical event, one that really, as I say in the resolution, cemented Canada's international reputation. Some people say earned us a seat at the Paris Convention following First World War, but also one that had a local connection with Sergeant Merryfield's heroics, and he was awarded a Medal of Bravery for his heroics in that battle. So I thought that it was a fitting name. Some of the Merryfield family lives in the P patch, and I thought that there was a good reason to honor the Canadian history and honor the local connection by naming it Passchendaele Lane.
Any other comments on that? Councillor Hilsinger, did you want to add anything?
I have nothing to add. I'm really happy to support this. This is in our ward, Matthew's in my ward, and I think it's a great recognition. And I do hope our colleagues here will support this evening.
Hey, Council, I'll see nothing else. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so at 10-1.
And agenda item 8.2 is OHIP eye care, a motion by Councillor Scott and Hollingsworth, whereas routine eye care is critical in early detection of eye diseases like glaucoma, cataracts, and macular degeneration, and the health of eyes is critical to overall health and quality of life. And whereas conditions that may be detected with an annual eye exam include diabetes mellitus, glaucoma, cataracts, retinal disease, amblyopia, lazy eye, visual field defects, loss of part of the usual field of vision, corneal disease, strabismus, crosses eyes, recurrent uveitis, an inflammation of the uvea, the middle layer of the eye that consists of the iris, ciliary body, and choroid and optic pathway disease. And whereas payments from OHIP have only increased 9% over the last 30 years, which has not come close to matching inflation of costs, which include rent, staff, utilities, equipment, taxes, and supplies. And whereas the lack of funding makes it difficult to invest in modern technology, and newer technology means earlier detection of eye disease. And whereas the provincial government's refusal to formally negotiate with optometrists for more than 30 years has forced optometrists to absorb approximately $173 million annually in the cost to deliver eye care to Ontarians. And whereas the 2021 Ontario budget did not address OHIP insured eye care, Ontario optometrists took action and voted to withdraw OHIP services starting September 1, 2021, unless the government agrees to legally binding negotiations to fund these services, at least to the cost of delivery. And whereas this job action will jeopardize good eye care for those who need the care of an optometrist the most and will have the greatest impact on the most vulnerable groups, children whose lifetime ability to learn and develop depends on good vision, and the elderly who are at the greatest risk for vision-threatening ocular diseases. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Council of the City of Sault Ste. Marie requests that the provincial government recognize the value that access to quality eye care brings to all Ontarians and act now to protect it. Further, that the provincial government addresses OHIP insured eye care immediately and enter into legally binding negotiations with Ontario optometrists to fund these services at least to the cost of delivery, and that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Premier Ford, Ontario Minister of Health Christine Elliott, and MPP Ross Romano.
Okay, so we will start with you, Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When Ms. Bruni first approached council with the idea behind this, I immediately jumped at offering up a motion. I'm good friends with an optometrist. He's been telling me for years about this. For some context, optometrists are, when they do OHIP covered services, get about $45 for an appointment that costs them about $80. So this is anyone who's under the age of 19, anyone who's a senior. I myself have been directly impacted by this work action, as I've been trying to get my son in for his follow-up appointment and they will not take him. I think that it's important to recognize that they're not getting these increases, and it's something that you never know, you never assume, right? You think, oh, optometrists, eye doctors, they must be making great money. Unfortunately, that is not the case. So I'm happy to bring this forward. I think that it's an important issue to support eye health. It's often overlooked, no pun intended, and hopefully the rest of the councillors will support this motion.
Okay, any other comments on that motion? Councillor Hollingsworth, go ahead.
I'm happy to be the seconder on this, and what we're seeing now is that because optometrists are not seeing some patients, they're now being redirected to our emergency rooms. And as you know, we cannot afford our emergency rooms to have further patients because of other problems and difficulties. So I support this, and I also have a close friend that's optometrist, and also young kids that need eye care. So I hope that the rest of the council supports this as well. Well summarized, Councillor Scott. Thank you.
All in favor, council? Passed unanimously, I believe. That brings us to 8.3, when the clerk has an opportunity to read it.
A motion by Councillors Gardy and Vezo-Allen, whereas the Robinson-Huron Treaty recognizes the political and economic relationship between the First Nation signatories and the Crown, including the sharing of revenues of any resource development on the lands involved in the treaty. And whereas the Ontario Superior Court found the Crown has a mandatory and reviewable obligation to increase the treaty's annuities when the economic circumstances warrant, reflecting a fair share of the value of the net Crown resource-based revenues generated from the territory. And whereas the court also found that the First Nation plaintiffs' claims are not barred by Ontario's limitations legislation, and that the Government of Ontario does not benefit from the doctrine of Crown immunity. And whereas Ontario appealed these decisions, but the appeals have not yet been decided. And whereas Canada did not appeal the decisions. And whereas on August 13, 2021, the Robinson-Huron Treaty leadership received correspondence from Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Carolyn Bennett, informing them that Canada was prepared to enter into negotiations and settle their ongoing annuities litigation out of court. And whereas Canada's mandate to resolve this claim comes with the requirement that the province of Ontario be party to the negotiations and settlement, and whereas a settlement of this claim will not only assist the Robinson-Huron Treaty nations achieve improved health outcomes and economic development, as well as assist all of Northeastern Ontario. Now therefore be it resolved that Mayor Provenzano, on behalf of City Council, write a letter to Premier Doug Ford, encouraging the provincial government to enter into good faith negotiations with the Robinson-Huron leadership to finally settle this dispute.
Councillor Gardy, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Councillor Vezo-Allen. I'll take comments from anybody else on council who has them.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think the resolution is quite straightforward. It essentially reiterates the letter that we received from the leadership of the Robinson-Huron Treaty group. It needs to be settled. The federal government has stepped up. The provincial government is the impediment right now. I'm hopeful that at the encouragement of several municipalities in the area, that they may very well choose to step up and enter into these negotiations. And those are the extent of my comments.
Councilor Vezo-Allen?
Very brief, privileged to second this with Councillor Gardy. In another role at Autism Ontario, we really discussing equities with autism services in our First Nations. That's sort of been point of discussion at our meetings. And I'm hopeful that this can be resolved and that we can see improved care in our First Nations for our young people and for our elders and everyone else. And proud to have my name on this with Councillor Gardy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Vezo-Allen. Any other comments from council? Councilor Shoemaker?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. When council was requested to put forward a motion of this nature, I know that you had stated at the last council meeting you had a number of councillors reach out eager to put their names on this and support this. I was one of them. Obviously, I was behind in line to Councillor Gardy and Councillor Vezo-Allen, but I think it just shows council's full commitment to this getting resolved, seeing this resolved, and that we are all eager to assist our neighbors in any way we can in the resolution of it. So I fully expect that this will be a unanimous vote of council in support of Councillor Gardy and Vezo-Allen's resolution, and I appreciate them taking the time to put it together.
Anything else from any of the remaining councillors? I think it's a good motion. I'm happy to support it. I will get on it immediately. I can confirm I spoke to Chief Sayers and told him it would be on our agenda, and he was grateful that we were taking this step at the treaty chief's request, and he said he'd be happy to have that support. So, all in favor? Motion is carried unanimously.
Agenda item 8.4, I have a motion by Councillors Gardy and Hilsinger. Whereas in January of 2020, Council directed staff to consider and report back on a process by which Council can, within its legal authority, discourage and or eliminate the use of plastic bags within the community. And whereas in June of 2020, city staff delivered its initial report back to council to provide information on the subject. The request by council at the June 8, 2020 meeting was clarified, and the strong desire of council to take initiative with regard to the elimination of plastics was stressed. And whereas in April of 2021, city staff delivered a report and the following resolution was approved, that the report of the Director of Public Works dated April 12, 2021 be received, and that council provide its full support to Clean North and city staff in the development, education, and promotion of a plastic-free Sault Ste. Marie. Now therefore be it resolved that city staff be requested to provide an update on the progress and results to date since the April 2021 resolution regarding the elimination of plastic bags was passed.
I'm going to start with you, Councillor Hilsinger, because you had reached out to me about this, and I know Councillor Gardy was supporting you on it, so you can make your comments, and then I'll go to him.
Thank you. That's very kind. Councillor Gardy and I have been rather passionate, as he is, and I tend to be, on numerous things for the last couple of years now, I guess. And we did have some action take place in the spring. I personally believe that our community needs to undertake some significant efforts to reduce our use of single-use plastics. Staff recommended the plastic-free pledge as a getting started on that. I did participate in it. And I'm just really curious to know, are we achieving the desired results? Are we reducing the use of single-use plastics? Where are we at? And, if we're not where we want to be, then how are we going to get there? So looking forward to getting this report from staff back.
Thank you, Councillor Hilsinger. Councillor Gardy, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, we're not where we want to be, which Councillor Hilsinger just said, and we want to improve the situation, and we'd like an update as to what the uptake is with this pledge and where we're going from here on in. And I look forward to the report coming back, and I thank Councillor Hilsinger for her dedication to this effort. Thanks.
Do any other councilors have any comments, or questions on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried.
That will bring us to bylaws. So we had two separated and one's already been voted upon. I have a motion by Councillor Scott and Vezo-Allen resolved that all bylaws under item 11 of the agenda under date September 27, 2021, save and accept bylaws 2021-186 and 2021-191 be approved.
All in favor? Motion carried.
So 2021-191 is separated on account of Councillor Shoemaker's conflict. It's a motion by Councillor Scott and Vezo-Allen resolved that bylaw 2021-191 being a bylaw to amend Sault Ste. Marie zoning bylaws 2005-150, 2005-151 concerning lands located at 1525 Trunk Road and 834 River Road be passed in open council this 27th day of September 2021.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
And I have a motion by Councillors Gardy and Dufour resolved that this council now adjourn.
All in favor? Motion's carried.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Take care.